We're live? Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. At least we got one member of the public here with us this morning. I hate to say it, but that's a good thing. Yeah, I know they are. I say all kinds of stuff I shouldn't. Anyway, we respectfully acknowledge that we live and work in Mi'kmaq as steward of the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. Anybody have any changes to the agenda? I hope it's not adding things because we got a lot of stuff on there, but whatever. Somebody want to move, we approve it as?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Okay, public input. Anybody here who wish to speak to the public that does not have an appointment? That you guys aren't allowed. Okay, nobody. Minutes of the previous meeting. Things are going too easy. Council minutes, January the 30th. Errors or omissions? I don't hear any. Moved by Councilor Bremner. Seconded by somebody? Councilor Coolin, yeah. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. I'm not aware of any proclamations.
Nope, not today.
Committee of the Whole, and I think that we had some motions maybe? Can't remember. Some motions to approve?
That's what you've got in your hand, the last page.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, so we have a variety of motions there to approve. Is somebody prepared? Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think Mr. Main's discussion actually centers around this. Does it help? We
Yes.
could move her up.
Yes.
Yeah, that is correct, yeah. 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 Trudy, you ready to come up? Yeah.
I did have them here in case you need them. All right, I don't know if I need to state my name, it's the presentation, but it's Trudy Payne, and I am 5 Walker Cut.
They make you do it.
So good morning, Warden, Deputy Warden, Councillor, staff, and members of the public. I am here to speak to the changes to the Village Planning Bylaw being recommended by the Village Planning Advisory Committee. Last week, I did speak briefly on this topic at public input, and after watching the Committee of the Whole meeting that same evening, you may find some of what I have to say a bit repetitive, as many of you raised some of the points that are in my slides, so for this, I apologize. Before I begin my presentation, I would first like to thank the members of Council for weighing carefully the potential impacts each recommended motion could have on residents, property owners, and businesses. Based on the motions before Council today, if approved, it appears these changes will indeed help address the changing needs in our community and will enable the potential to increase housing options in the village. I would respectfully ask that Council revisit motions 2025-059 to change the section of Water and Duke Street from commercial to residential, as there is one commercial property that has been there a very long time. If this property could be zoned commercial, which I understand is possible, and zone the rest residential, this would protect all property owners in that area. I don't know if you're on slide 2, but as stated last week, the recommendations of the Planning Advisory Committee overall would significantly impact any growth, cautious or otherwise, in the village. To summarize, they are recommending going from ADUs to no ADUs, rezoning almost 1/3 of the commercial zone to residential and eliminating multi-unit housing options. When businesses were asked what their challenges were in the village of Chester, including the municipality, I understand that the top two challenges that they stated was the shortage of skilled workers and housing. And I suspect the reason why they can't get the skilled workers is because the lack of housing. I don't know if my slides are following or not, but the slide that I'm currently looking at is the one that reflects the Municipal Housing Needs Report 2023, which reflects this municipality. I'm not going to go over all this, but I do believe in your own report, it reflects that there is a significant housing deficiency, and if we don't look at options to increase our housing stock, this gap will continue. The Municipal Government Act has been changed to allow municipalities or give them more power and authority to increase the housing stocks in municipalities across this province, to the point where municipalities can provide direct financial assistance to businesses for the purpose of increasing the availability of affordable housing in a municipality. They also speak a couple of times to the power that a land use bylaw could have to increase the housing stock. The province has come out with a provincial statement of interest regarding housing. And that goal is to provide housing opportunities to meet the needs of all Nova Scotians. And the basis of this is for adequate shelter is a fundamental requirement for all Nova Scotians, and that a wide range of housing types is necessary to meet the needs of Nova Scotians. The provincial and federal government has come out with a number of programs and policies to encourage the increase of housing across not just Nova Scotia, but across Canada. The province of Nova Scotia's most popular one that people are familiar with is the Secondary and Backyard Suite Incentive Program. In their definition of a backyard suite, it includes a basement apartment and an apartment detached from your primary residence. Those are examples that they use. The provincial government, the federal government has come out with programs to provide low-interest loans, and they recently announced that they would be charging no HST for multi-unit rental properties. So this is definitely an incentive for developers to increase housing. And of course, the Housing Accelerator Fund program, which I'm sure that you're familiar with, which is available to municipalities, but you must allow for 4 units as a right to apply. A recent example in the village is, I understand that council amended the bylaw to allow for Maple Cottage to provide a rental unit. I support this. We need to have a bylaw in place that enables for more options of rental units or living units, depending on family situations. The next few slides is going to talk about, I'm going to speak to the benefits of accessory dwelling units. Some councillors spoke quite nicely to this and the multi-generational families and the needs that people have. But in short, ADUs does help to address the housing shortages. In these cases, individuals would be absorbing the cost to provide the housing options, not the municipality. A detached ADU can create an independent living unit for parents, adult children, and for renters. We often hear about the shortage of rental units, but we also often hear about the shortage of accessible rental units. And an ADU could provide an accessible space. I'm not going over each one because you guys have it in your package and I only have 10 minutes. ADUs offer young people entry-level housing choices. I know that's the case in my own family. ADUs provide a more dispersed and incremental, cautious way of adding homes to a neighborhood, and it also allows for the development in neighborhoods with minimal visual impact and without adding to an area's sprawl. I included this in the PowerPoint, which I stole from Snap ADU. This quote, ADUs represents a versatile and strategic investment in one's property's future. These units not only cater to the growing desire for multi-generational living, but also embody the essence of aging in place, offering a dignified, independent living arrangement for seniors within the comfort of their own community. As we navigate the complexities of modern living and rising housing costs, investing in an ADU stands out as a smart, adaptable, an environmentally conscious choice. The next slide, this comes from a survey that was sent out by the municipality to residents living in the village in 2021. I understand that you had a 236 response rate, which means 31%, which is pretty good when you talk about surveys. The question specifically around ADUs, one being strongly support and one being disagree, you can tell just by that quick slide that I have there that most of the responses were in the 4 and 5, so strongly supporting ADUs. And that's a survey that was done in 2021. So some of my thoughts on the proposed changes. To approve a bylaw that does not allow for any detached ADUs is not considering the various scenarios or challenges residents and families may be facing in the village. To not approve ADUs or no multi-unit housings is essentially saying no to development in the village. It could allow for sprawl to happen as well. I often hear we say we want to increase tourism. My question is, where will tourists stay? If we have no hotel and we have no short-term rentals, I just leave that question. No ADUs would be limiting choices for aging in place, what I've already said, and no ADUs could mean youth moving out of our communities, which I think could possibly be some of the skilled workers that our businesses are trying to find. No ADUs could mean limiting independence of an adult child with varying needs. And I really struggle, I've thought a lot about this, to understand the difference between a basement suite, an in-law suite, or a detached ADU. What is the logical reason not to allow for a detached ADU as a housing or rental option? All these options provide for a bathroom, a kitchen, a living space, and a bedroom or bedrooms, depending on the size. Now, I know you understand your role as council. Many of you have been around the table, and you've probably done orientation and taken your oath. But as a resident, this is how I see the role of council. To be strategic and visionary, to sustain communities and be solution-based to meet challenges, to set policies and bylaws, and ones that I think that look at solution-based. Find ways to seek input from all residents and represent all citizens. You are tasked with making those difficult decisions, not only thinking about today, but thinking about tomorrow, and monitoring and evaluating the implementation of your decisions, policies, and bylaws, and be ready to pivot if necessary, depending on the climate and the environment we're living in, and balance the needs for rules and regulations with less red tape and not infringing too much on a property owner's rights. So in conclusion, the majority of the proposed changes by the Planning Advisory Committee to the bylaw is going against everything the provincial and federal government has put programs in place to support the increase of housing and rental options. The proposed changes to the bylaw is going against the recommendations made by your own professional planning staff. One of the tools that you have to help address the housing crisis is the planning bylaw. Is it going to solve everything? No, but it is a tool that you have. My understanding with the municipal planning strategy was to catch up on modern housing options and to help address the housing crisis we are all in. You have the power and the responsibility to make decisions that will determine the path that this village takes. Again, I just want to restate that the motions that are being put forth today that I suspect will be approved and perhaps amended is heading in the right direction. And I am very hopeful that we will get to first reading and a second reading and eventually a bylaw that will allow for other housing options in the village, I should say, specifically of Chester. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Trudy.
I don't know if people have questions or.
I don't know. Do you? Oh, you do, sorry.
Thank you. I was jotting down quickly, but you referenced one of our motions, so I'm appreciative of Councillor Vino bringing this to our attention, the motions that we're going to be looking at in a minute from Committee of the Whole. The commercial business that will obviously be tremendously impacted. Which motion again was that, Trudy? Everyone, if I could ask? Yeah. Yeah, by 9, okay. So we might want to give consideration to that, so thank you for bringing that, that's not a question, it's just a statement, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. Others here that are much more familiar with that particular street and that commercial business and what's operated there, what's operating there now, and what's been operating over the centuries, I'm sure. So also too, it certainly piqued my interest when you mentioned and reminded me about the Housing Accelerator Fund. And if we want to access or qualify any of those dollars for this particular area, it has to be, must allow for 4 units as of right, and yet we've stipulated allow up to 2 units by right and an additional 2 by development agreement. So
I don't know
that's,
if that changes the
that's
qualifications.
certainly interesting to me.
So Brian's here, he can speak a little more to it, but my understanding is we do have Housing Accelerator Fund dollars.
Yes.
We did agree to, and most of our zoning does allow for 4 units as of right, and we did specify that the village, in our application, that the village would have, potentially have different treatment. And so we were successful with the application even with that.
Right, so thank you for pointing that out though, Trudy. So in terms of Housing Accelerator Fund, it's not applicable, or we're not qualifying or eligible, which is what you just explained, and that's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't disqualify
That's
us.
right.
No,
Oh,
we
no,
are-
for the
we
other
are-
areas, for the other areas, but again, the village being.
No, well, the village qualifies as well.
Yeah, yeah, so the village is included in our Housing Accelerator Fund
Just not-
application. They just, it
not
was
here.
identified that there were areas where the 4 units may
Right,
not be.
so just not here, on this
Yeah.
particular zone, okay, or area, okay. And also, my last, it is a question. So, Village Planning Advisory Committee is a committee of council with citizens stepping up and putting forward their names for consideration for the committee. Similar to us, in terms of us here, I think, representing the area and the greater good. So have you shared your thoughts / suggestions to the Village Planning Advisory Committee? Like, I'm not sure if you were at any of the meetings, and did you share all of these, knowing what they came back to us with?
Yes, I did speak. I believe it was at the October or November meeting. I
Okay.
can't remember.
Okay.
I wasn't given a time frame to speak, so unfortunately I had to rush through my
Right.
presentation. So I did.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, I understand the process that council is the decision maker.
Oh,
So,
yes.
and I did attend another meeting to become well-informed
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
brought my concerns here because ultimately, council is the decision maker.
No, thank you. I'm preparing for the public hearings, because knowing that we'll probably hear from the Planning Advisory Committee, yes, they have the right to do that, as many people, so I just want to be sure that you've shared what you've been sharing with us with that committee, in terms of them, the fact that they're representing the greater good. Okay, thank you.
I certainly shared my concerns about no development and the
Yes.
need for housing.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you, Trudy.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Garth, maybe you should come on up when we start making these motions in case we have specific questions. They pretty much are, yeah, so we're back to the committee of the whole, approving those recommendations.
So this is the one that Trudy's identified. You may want to.
Okay, so we'll separate this one out. 25059. Moved by Councillor Brimmer, seconded by Councillor Vino, that council approve the following recommendations from the Village Planning Advisory Committee. Remove the commercial zone between Duke Street and Water Street. And which particular commercial buildings that impact, though?
I don't have the address off the top of my head, but it's the Kayak Shack and South Shore Hearing.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's on.
the rope
on-
loft sort of building. Well, no.
No,
it's-
not the rope loft, no,
No.
further north
It's
up,
the little
but-
blue.
And it's on, it's on Duke Street. It
Okay.
doesn't front on
Oh,
Water
okay.
Street. Yeah. So I guess the background that I can provide here, so as we went through last year's drafts of the plan and the public meetings, I think it was in the September public hearing, we heard from a group of residents in this area who have a number of properties that have traditionally been zoned commercial, but they've been using them as residential, and they felt that they would like to be zoned residential to give them that assurance that, new commercial uses, or at that point, multi-unit apartment buildings, which have now been reduced to a 4-unit apartment building at maximum, would be, allowed next to them. So they submitted, I believe they came to council a couple of times and submitted a letter or a petition. On reviewing that petition, the letter that came with it purports that 100% of the property owners are in favor. The petition, the best I can tell from reviewing property owners and the folks who signed, is that there's 10 properties included in this motion.
Yeah.
7 of the 10 are represented in the petition, and the particular commercial property that we're speaking of is not represented, as far as I'm aware. Now, with companies, and, there's always the possibility that somebody, but in terms of the civic addresses or property identifiers that were listed on the petition, it doesn't appear to be represented by this. And this is something that I think when it's been discussed before, it's been thought of as a pretty easy one because there seemed to be strong support. This issue of this existing commercial business has just come up in the last couple of weeks.
So it's an existing commercial business, so as long as it continues to operate, it's allowed to function.
It would become a legal non-conforming use if we change the zoning. So that means that if the business ceased to operate.
If it ceased to operate. Yeah.
Right, but there's more to it than that.
Okay.
It's a significant change. If they want to change the type of business, they may be restricted in that. And there would be many types of business that they would, so if they were retail, they might be able to switch to another type of retail, but they wouldn't be able to switch to a restaurant or to any of the other commercial uses. So it's a significant limitation on the property. I just want to make that clear. Yeah.
So what do we want to do with this particular, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
I just have a question. So is the rope loft currently zoned commercial?
No, okay, so totally different question, but we'll go through that. So the rope loft is not zoned commercial. Today it's zoned waterfront residential. It's proposed in the draft to be zoned marine development, which is the replacement zone for the marine industrial zone on Back Harbor that we talked about a lot last year. So the rope loft is included there as an existing commercial use and allowed to continue. So we've protected the rope loft property.
Okay.
And just as one other piece of background that I should have mentioned initially, the entirety of Duke Street between Valley Road and our other commercial core was, in the first couple of drafts, the entirety of Duke Street was proposed to become commercial. So that's why we're kind of in it. So if that had happened, this business would have been fine. They would have been protected. So it's now that we're walking back these recommendations and step by step piecemeal that we're ending up with these. With a patchwork where we're gonna potentially have one commercial property in and amongst a whole bunch of residential properties if we go with this, because we're moving away from the initial thoughts and recommendations to rezone all of Duke Street to commercial.
And
We
the
did
other one would be, several years ago, there was a store, Warp and Woof, which was a retail store on Water Street.
Yes.
Is that zone commercial? Is that residential?
So today it's all commercial. I believe they have, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe they have signed the petition in favor of changing it to
residential.
Oh, that's
residential.
interesting.
And they're one of the properties
They're one
in
of
this
the
area.
7 that would have signed, so I think there's
Okay.
10 properties in total, 7 have signed, and I believe they're one of the 7 representing that lot.
Thank you.
So I guess to make things simple, if we wanted to, we could leave that one property commercial.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Councilor Bremer, sorry.
Thank you, Warden Weber, to the rest of council. That building they're referring to, I believe, was the old Hilchi restaurant
Yeah.
at one point, and multiple uses over my lifetime here, and it's always been, I believe, commercial-based, no matter what it was. I don't believe that ever was residential. I would be in favor of looking at making that building allowable to be, stay in the
Leave it.
commercial, because I believe that it is a value of many options there for that area, because there's a lot of density in that area, and people have used that building for different purposes, and I think that's a good consideration. Thank you.
Councilor Reno.
I don't have the benefit of the map at the moment, but directly across the street from that, there's formerly a commercial building. Is that also included in this?
No, so that across Duke Street
That's a different street.
today is zoned residential and is now proposed to stay residential in the draft
Okay.
as it sits today. Yeah, like I said, the initial intention had been to connect the two commercial zones along Duke Street with additional commercial zoning, and that was rejected, so now it's sitting as residential, so that the west side of Duke Street is residential.
Okay. So this particular motion, we would just need to amend to allow that particular building
Yep, so we
to
could
remain.
rezone all the other 9 lots and just leave this
one as
one
commercial.
property as commercial. Yep.
Are you looking for a motion?
I am, yeah.
I'll make a motion that we amend 2025-059 to allow that address to be state commercial. And I'm unaware of the exact address, but
We'll
thank you.
clarify that. Yeah.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Abdallah. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, 060. Moved by Councillor Bremner, Councillor Vino, direct staff to amend the recommendation to change core commercial to allow up to 2 units per lot by right and an additional 2 units by development agreement. And that was also a change from what Village Commission, or Village PAC recommended. What do we want to do with that one?
Thank you, Warden Weber. My question to the CAO, just clarification, we do have documentation that if we don't meet the numbers that Councillor Connors mentioned, we still qualify for that,
Correct.
the funding and that ability, because I
Yes.
think that is an important step of clarity and reasoning why we actually have chosen possibly less than their number that they've said and
Yes, we do.
gone for it. Thank you so much.
So what do we want to do with this motion?
Make a move that we adopt that motion.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Church. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. 061, moved by Councillor Bremner, seconded by Councillor Church. The council directs staff to not include motion 2024530 and to be stricken and that the plan be left as it was previously. I don't remember precisely what that meant. but-
You need to tell us what that is.
I don't remember.
I don't know what 530 off the top of my head is. We'll have to scroll back to it. My understanding was council was going to consider the Duke Street separately and all the other cow motions as a package, but that was what was articulated at the beginning of the session.
Yeah, we would have to go back and look from last week.
Well, it's hard to make a motion on it without knowing what it is we're doing. So while you're looking for that, we could
Yep.
move on to 532. The core commercial zone remain as it is presently on the Valley Road. So we left it as commercial. We didn't move it to residential as some people had recommended.
Correct. Yep.
So do we want to leave it that way?
So moved.
Moved by Council. Yeah. Moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Bremner, I think, yeah. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Tell me when you're ready to go back to the other one.
Motion 224, or 530 was moved by,
Okay, you're on.
moved by Carol Moss, seconded by Brenda Mulroney for the Village Advisory Committee to recommend to council to reduce the 10 units per lot to a maximum of 1 unit per lot in the core commercial zone.
Yeah, so there were 3 motions. Thank you, Pam. There were 3 motions that were related to the change to the core commercial zone. So council has already essentially addressed this because 060 is the overarching motion that confirms what council would like done in the core commercial zone. So this next one would have just been
So we're leaving
supporting
it,
the same direction.
yeah, we're leaving it as is. So 061 is somebody, or are we gonna? Moved.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Gunner, seconded by Councillor Asif, that we approve that recommendation. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion's carried. Okay, 063, approve the remove the section 7.3.5 in its entirety. I know.
This is why we went through the report last week, because I
Yeah,
have it
I
all
know.
outlined. So unfortunately, I don't have that with me. That was a section out of the land use bylaw. I think this was the exemption for existing structures in the highway commercial zone from undertaking landscaping and parking requirements.
Yes.
And the recommendation was to remove the exemption so that every development there has to landscape
Oh,
the
they
lot
have the
and has to have
landscaping
parking
stuff,
on the
yes,
side.
I remember that.
Pretty
one,
sure
yeah.
that's 735.
Yeah.
I almost got this thing memorized.
Councillor Coolin?
I think we still need to see it in black and white.
If we could bring up last
You know,
week's package, then.
Garth's memory is probably as great as
So
anyone's
we'll
can
just
be.
call up last
We'll
week's
call it-
package
we'll call it
on our
last week.
iPads. Everybody has it on the iPad.
Thank you,
She
Emily.
can bring it up here, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I would have come prepared if I didn't know we were gonna debate each one separately,
No.
my apologies.
no, and there's been so much going on, I just can't remember what it was we did last week. Hard to remember last night, but.
Is it 735 we're looking
Yes.
at? 735 existing structures exemption. Existing 1 and 2 unit dwellings and additions to existing buildings totaling less than 200 meters squared since the adoption of the date of this bylaw are not required to comply with 733 and 734. So the motion was.
Which the hedges in between them and things like
right.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
And we thought they should have to
that's right.
continue with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Brimmer, seconded by Councillor Church. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed?
No, sorry.
Motion's carried anyway. All right.
Slow, trying to do 3 things, sorry.
Okay, 064, direct staff not to remove clause 7.3.6 in the land use bylaw.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded, discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. Coastal protection. Forward a letter to the province in support of the Coastal Protection Act, noting that it is the priority for the municipality.
Seconded.
Moved by Councillor Asif, seconded by Councillor Bremner. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And I think that was it.
One more, the Remo local priorities.
Oh, yes, okay, but it has nothing to do with all what we were just doing. Yeah. Moved by Councillor Vino, seconded by Councillor Brennan, the council approved the list of pre-planning initiatives outlining the request for direction prepared by January Remo local priorities as follows, and then they're all there, so. Somebody want to move that? Moved by Councillor Vino, seconded by Councillor Asif. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Right, thank you, council. And just as an update, so with those changes, I've been getting prepared to update the documents, so we're hoping to have those back for you by the end of February for first reading and setting the date for
Then
the
we go
public
back to
hearing.
public hearing and see
Yep.
what happens again.
That's right, yep. Right.
Yeah, well, one of these days we gotta stick to whatever it is we decided. Okay. Lunenburg County Senior Safety, Tina, I think?
Thank you. So you would have received the monthly report for the month of January in the council package last Friday. So I assume you've perused it. Again, nothing to jump out. Business as usual, high numbers. Great impact in terms of the senior safety coordinator, Lisa Bennett. Because this is a new term of council, I think the suggestion that we had discussed over the last
bring
couple of
him in.
years would be to have Lisa come in and put a face to the name for everybody, and especially the new councillors who would not be, would not have met Lisa. But if it's the, not the will, but the understanding of this council I would like to, on behalf of this council, mention at the next board meeting that we would support the idea of not having to take staff valuable time to prepare a presentation, if you will, and I'm not doing that flippantly, because we do receive the monthly reports. They will also be preparing a 6 or 8 page annual document that we will receive, and that way it does allow her to focus on what she's doing on the ground. If that's okay, I can take that suggestion back to the boardroom.
Sounds reasonable to
In terms of
me.
our council, okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't hear anybody.
So that's the report. I kind of gobbled it up a little bit, so if there's any questions at any time after this or during or anything, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, so, Social Public Libraries, Ashley. How you doing this morning?
I'm well, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Well, pretty good anyway.
Yeah. Hopefully you can all get home before the weather. So this is me just doing the rounds. As Tina just said, there's new faces around the table at a lot of our councils. So Shore Public Libraries serves 6 municipalities, and I saved the best for last. You guys are my 6th presentation in the past month. So just some highlights of what we're doing, and then I can take any questions if you want. So most of it's just photos and graphs. I do go through it pretty quickly. So here's, these are photos from our bookmobile. So we had traveling soup last year, which was wonderful. And then that's a photo from Halloween evening in Mahone Bay. So that was a really lovely evening as well. You can go to the next slide. So of the 9 library regions in the province, Shore is in 4th place for the weekly average hours. We have 33.9 hours at our 5 locations. So the 4 branches in the bookmobile. Next slide. And in terms of the in-person visits per open hour, we are also in 4th place with just over 18 folks visiting every open hour. Next slide.
It's actually not bad.
Yeah, our branch comparison is by far the busiest location is the Bridgewater location in the LCLC. And then our bookmobile, in terms of visits and particularly circulation, rivals some of the smaller branches as well. So still very well used. Next slide. Just want to highlight some of the services we offer. So our family literacy, of course, the picture books, the toys, the games. Multiple studies continue to show that reading together as a family is still the best way to set kids up for success in school and beyond. Next slide. As well, our programs, that the photo on the right there is of new play kitchens that we got in all of our branch locations through a food literacy grant. So that, as opposed to school, which can feel mandatory for some kids, and the library is, you elect to be there, and so it instills a love of self-driven learning and lifelong learning, because you learn that learning can be fun, which isn't the case for everyone in school. So our program attendance has recovered from pre-pandemic levels. So this past fiscal year, we had over 2,000 programs, and 13,500 folks attended those programs. And as well, the physical space that we offer has been particularly valuable, especially since the pandemic. More and more people are working from home. They have remote jobs or they're studying remotely. And so that neutral third place, away from the distractions of home, you don't have to buy a coffee every 20 minutes to be allowed to stay, is really valuable. And not everyone has access to high-speed Wi-Fi or computers at home. So we are still finding that some people who are privileged with those think that it's a given, but if you come to any of our locations, you'll see that's not the case. There's lots of people who rely on our technology. Our catalog is called Same Page. It's 3 years old this past month, and so that's a consortial catalog of 8 regional library systems, Halifax being the only exception in the province. There's over 1 million items to borrow, and we're a little bit victims of our own success there. Pre-Same Page, before the pandemic, a 5-year rolling average was about 37,000 items outgoing between those 8 regions, and then this past year that reached over 500,000 items. So an increase of nearly 13 times more material flowing through the province. And that's, I will just note, with the same staff, the same budget, the same physical facility. So our shipping costs are enormous. Yeah, thank you. So very, very successful, and now we're just kind of trying to adapt to that growing pain. Next slide. Our physical and digital borrowing has not only recovered from the pandemic, but continues to grow. So I think when I was in library school, a couple decades ago now, we talked about libraries evolving, but I think it's closer to the truth to say that we continue to build, because we haven't left behind those core services. People are still, so in 2019, we had 251,000 physical items, so books, magazines, DVDs checked out, and then this past year we had 348, so nearly 100,000 more than what we did in the year before the pandemic. So people are still wanting those physical items. Our bookmobile, we launched a new vehicle in 2021. It has 18 regular stops with 6 in the District of Chester, New Ross, Chester Legion, 2 as well as Highway 3, so at the Legion and Highway 3 in Valley Road, Chester Basin, Blandford, and Chester Grant. And so as you saw in the branch comparison, the visits do still remain high. And of course, anyone who owns a vehicle knows the maintenance can be quite high, but it's definitely less operational than reaching that geographic spread with brick and mortar buildings.
We saw it down at Valley Road when we came in
Yeah,
last
yep,
night.
yes, yeah, Wednesday is our day every week to be here. And then every third Friday, we're in Blandford as well. So just a few other things that we are doing. South Shore Public Libraries alone has distributed over 2 million rapid tests since 2021. We help folks book vaccine appointments, use the Maple and the Your Health NS virtual apps. And we have a program that's an American Library Association winning program called Caring Calls, where one of our staff has a regular roster of folks that she calls every week just to check up on them. And that's been really valuable. It helps isolation and loneliness. In terms of our spending, just to point out that we're on the low end of the slide for per capita spending, $30.64. But on the other hand, we're in first place for collection spending. The next slide is almost $7 per resident. So we do that by keeping our administrative and other costs low and putting more of that back into the collection. And I think it's really paid off. On the next slide, you can see that we're in, I think, third place, for annual borrowing. So almost over 6 items borrowed per resident. A few highlights from this year, the types of programs that we offer. They do help encourage active and healthy living. We get folks outside, try an e-bike, snowshoes, other equipment that you might not have access to. Our Pride programming was our biggest year yet, so we had our new bookmobile in the Pride Parade there in Bridgewater, which was just a lovely celebration with a lot of our staff. And my kids, too, are in that top photo. And then we had a Reading with Royalty program at 3 of our branches, including the first one ever in Queens County. Next slide. We had a Truth and Reconciliation event in Bridgewater on September 28th. We unveiled our new Jealousy welcome signs. That's the top photo there, done by local artist Jessica Jerome, and it features the traditional place names of our branches and our bookmobile stops. And we showed the short film McGeet's Doll and Led Children in Making Rag Dolls. And so I won't read that, but it's in your package. There was a great quote shared to social media of a 4-year-old that slept with her doll that night. So really high impact program there. And I mentioned the food literacy program with the play kitchens. We also held lots of hands-on cooking demonstrations, really basic items like soups and tea biscuits. The bottom photo was the new gourmet chef Simon Francis coming in and leading us in traditional Bannock baking. And our Lunenburg Lift Fest, of course, our 9th annual was this past November, so this year will be 10, a big one there. So the highlight there is that it brings international best-selling authors and local authors together in a really intimate setting, so it's a chance for the audience to interact with the authors. We did a marketing audit this year, so through a grant from the Library Development Fund, which is a provincial program. And so there was a survey and interviews, and we found that there's overwhelming positive sentiment of the library, particularly in the areas of our staff, our bookmobile, and the sense of community that folks feel. And of course, what people wanted was more hours, more programs, more quiet space. And then what's next for the library? Just to point out that the library funding formula is currently before the provincial government. It's regulated by the Libraries Act. There was no formula in place for about 17 years, and then for 10 years, there was no increases at all. 2021, we did see an increase that was the same amount for the past 5 years, but of course, during that time, we all know there was inflation and cost of living rises, so we're essentially trying to do the same, and the community that's asking for even more. I just replied yesterday to an email about why we aren't open Monday evening in Bridgewater. We don't have the money, and so all of those costs mean that our communities are growing, they're expecting our services to grow, but we can't meet that demand. And this is a screenshot from a report that's linked there. It's called Overdue, the Case for Canada's Public Libraries. It was done by the Canadian Urban Institute, so it does focus on urban libraries, but we're seeing a similar trend here. And it just shows the difference between the rise in demand compared to the change in support in funding. And so it's a wonderful 80-page report, lots of information there. And my last couple slides are just to highlight our staff. So we have an FTE of 17 staff. It's 34 people, a mix of full-time and part-time. And then just to point out, say Eastern County's regional library is similar to us, Colchester East Hants is about 30. And then if you go to the next slide, the branches are in the same order. And you'll see that our key performance indicators, number of visits, circulation, program attendance are a lot higher than branches with similar staff. So we're doing basically the amount of work of a much larger system with fewer staff. And then the next slide is a different way of looking at that same information. We have the most population served per staff and the most items checked out per staff, almost twice of what Colchester East Hants or Halifax, sorry, more than twice of what Halifax Public Libraries or
So
Colchester
you're
East
doing
Hants
way
are doing.
more work with way less
Absolutely.
money.
Yes, we are, yeah, and also, like you said, not a lot of money. So this was part of the funding review. A third-party HR firm, Essential HR, did a benchmarking exercise, so they compared public library wages across the rest of Canada and then here in Nova Scotia, so they're both the 75th percentile, and so it just shows the difference in the different positions, and that gap gets wider as you go up the organization. And then just a couple of local examples of, say, if you worked for NSCC, a library technician compared to a public library technician, or a manager for the province of Nova Scotia versus a manager for the libraries. And then, just in summary, that we do continue to serve the libraries. We celebrate reading, discovery, learning, and sharing. Our level of public trust is very high. The marketing survey reinforced that. Our in-person visits, circulation, and program attendance continue to rise year over year. We're not losing any ground there. The report that I linked to earlier and a lot of other studies have repeated this, shown this data that every dollar invested in public libraries translates to $6 in social capital in terms of resume help or kids learning to read, all of that kind of social capital. And of course, the public wants more, and our wages do lag the market, and staff are leaving the field as they report they can no longer afford to work for the library. And I can take any questions.
Thank you, it's very impressive.
Yeah, thank you.
It makes me kind of wonder what your budget request this year will be.
Well, yes, the funding formula met last, the committee. It was made up of municipal representatives, library board members, folks from the Nova Scotia Provincial Library, like the government, the CCTH department, and they did a lot of, like the HR benchmarking, they did a lot of data gathering and comparison, and so those recommendations are before the government. It's a new government. We have a new CCTH minister, so he's being briefed on the portfolio. I don't have a timeline of when the province hopes to get back to us, but I think that we've shown again and again that if we have the money, we'll put it right back into the community.
Clarissa?
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
I just have one quick question about the bookmobile. It's obviously it's sticking out to me like a sore thumb. So the 6 Chester stops does not include Hubbard's. I see Hubbard's is not there.
That's right, yeah, we don't have a stop in Hubbard's. There is a Halifax Public Libraries branch in Hubbard's. So the closest that we get to that Halifax line is the Blandford stop.
And because the Shaffer
Yes,
Library is
Shaffer
there.
branch.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. And the other thing, because you were beautifully speaking, but you were talking too fast, just like myself, so I respect that, is on the actual bookmobile, is the COVID test, or?
Yes.
Okay, so, all right.
We have
I just-
COVID tests, we have free period products on the bookmobile and in all our branches. We also have HIV rapid tests as well. That's a new partnership with the Department of Health, so
Yeah.
we have those on the bookmobile as
So
well.
furthering to that, is there any way that I could have the schedule as to when they stop?
Yeah,
At each
yep,
spot?
yep.
Because, obviously, if it doesn't stop in Hubbard's, and that's fine. And I've utilized the Shepherd Library. I mean,
Yeah, I know that folks who
obviously-
would live in that area
Yeah.
would use both,
It's
yeah.
just the side of
Yeah.
the county line.
Yeah.
Oh, their side, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah, because I would be able to give that information at least if
Yeah,
someone's in
absolutely.
Chester, Chester Village, Chester Basin, or whatever, then they could, because there are people that still are wishing to have, a COVID test in their home. And
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. If you could just give me the schedule, that'd be
Yes,
great.
yeah, maybe Tina, it's on our website, yeah, it's, yeah. You can,
Oh,
yeah.
I'll ask
Tina's
you
on
then.
our library
Thank
board.
you very
Yeah,
much.
she's on board.
Thank you.
Tina, your turn.
So I just want to mention a couple things, follow up with Councillor Coolin on the bookmobile. I'm happy to see that slide. It doesn't surprise me. In-person visits and circulation remain high, as does public sentiment. We love the library. We love the bookmobile. And I think that you would have to be a robot if you didn't. So on Tuesday, when I came out here for strategic priority session, and Warden Weber mentioned last evening or yesterday here in the village, you'd have to be a robot if you didn't drive throughout our communities, seeing the bookmobile and not feel something, right? You would, really, you're a robot.
We're the last one in the province. Cape Breton just
know.
retired their bookmobile about 4 months ago, and it was just the two of us that had one, so it's a dying, but we're not giving up on it anytime soon. It's so valuable.
And I didn't want to, wasn't going to mention this, but I remember, and the others at the table would remember, that I stepped up along with Tom Shepard and another individual to be the three-person new bookmobile committee. And I did not learn so much in those couple of years about bookmobiles, but it was a great experience. And again, we support the bookmobile, and I hope we never are going to lose it. The same page, those, that number is tremendously, unbelievably high, almost unbelievable, but I trust you, and I know that number is accurate. And I actually very much appreciate Same Page, because there's not a book or anything that I cannot look up and do the request and have come into New Ross.
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely in love with Same Page.
When people sign up for a card, if I'm serving them at the desk, I explain you can, everything from Yarmouth to Sydney,
Yeah.
except Halifax, they're they're kind of their own beast in the
Yeah.
province for sure, given their size. But you can have it, usually within a few days. Of course, the Canada Post strike threw that off. We did have to pause it, but the amount of material that comes through our headquarters, which is in the basement of the LCLC, the bottom level underneath the Bridgewater branch. It's a giant cart, a big green cart, and they're shipped in mailer bags, like 5-kilogram black Canada Post bags, and it's loaded every single day.
yeah.
Delivered in the morning, picked up in the evening, the outgoing stuff, and every day just material coming and going.
amazing.
It's wild.
Just because it's accessible, it's affordable, it's all ages, it's all language, it's just so
And it means that each
unbelievable.
region has to buy, we don't have to duplicate our efforts, right?
Yes.
We don't need to each buy a copy of the less, the more niche titles. We can share our resources, pool our resources.
And when I
yeah.
get my books now, I love looking to see where they're coming
Yeah,
from, to be
yes,
honest. Like
yeah.
which library, oh, this has come from Cumberland, right?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So, mentioning the postal strike.
Mm-hmm.
So I really was planning on, before I came in here today, to go through, because you do a wonderful newsletter, by the way, a new thing that Ashley's created since she came on board as CEO for staff and board.
Mm-hmm.
So what the library did and what this phenomenal staff did during the postal strike,
Mm.
and the fact that we weren't getting our books, there was a young gentleman that,
Yeah.
so maybe just talk about that, I'm sorry, because I think little
Yeah.
things are really important, and it's not really little.
Yeah, we have a new manager, Blake McDonald. He worked as a library clerk for us for the past few years, and he has just successfully interviewed and moved into a management position. And so he started last September, and in that role, and he material was backing up because we couldn't send it out. So people were returning their things, their Colchester book, their Cape Breton book, and we were just running out of room to put them. And so he contacted his colleagues in a few other systems. He was going to do it in his own minivan, but the Annapolis Valley had, I want to say, 22 banker boxes of So Shore material for us, and he measured his van, and he's like, that's not going to fit. So I said, just rent a U-Haul. So he rented a U-Haul, and he coordinated a loop. He went to Liverpool first and met with Western counties there, and then he went across to Berwick, and then he met with Pictou Antigonish in the IKEA parking lot of Dartmouth Crossing, and then came back. And so I said, take pictures as you go, because I love pictures. They tell, as you saw from my thing, they tell a story, right? So I do send a newsletter out to all staff to keep them up to date on what's happening throughout the system and the board. And pictures of him, with his colleagues around the province. And so that was his idea. He took that on himself, and that just helped. With the amount of material, even things like repetitive strain injury, our staff are handling so much. That 20,000 is an average, right? Of course, I'm not checking out 20,000, so the staff that are doing even more than that. And so there were boxes kind of piled everywhere. It's a safety issue, right? They could fall on you. So I thought our staff, like you said, are working so hard, and that was his idea. He drove it himself. That's not his job to be a driver, but there's the initiative of our staff that they really want to help. And so, yeah,
That's what I
it was
took
really
from
cool.
that.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and I know that as board members, we don't forget that, and I know that we don't hear, and so we are very blessed because we have phenomenal staff here at this organization too.
Yeah.
Like here,
Yeah,
here, so we
yeah.
know. So last thing I'm gonna say, this is it, just to mention, highlight the great work that you're doing around the Pride programming, and Truth and Reconciliation.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's making a difference, so thank you.
Councillor Church.
Thank you, Warden Weber. Nice to meet you.
as well.
And welcome. I love the library and I love the bookmobile. But just a little clarification, because maybe there's an extra stop. I see you have, it says 6 Chester stops. And I go to the bookmobile on the Windsor Road at Bonnie Lee Farm, so.
Yes,
Is there
that's right.
another one that says Chester Grant, or, because I know you used to go to Chester Grant.
No.
Great question.
It would be good to, that should be clarified, just so people know
Yes,
where the
yeah.
bookmobile is, because I get the schedule, and a lot of people do look at the schedule.
I picked up on that slide, but I was gonna mention it to Ashley at another time, because I know, we know where the bookmobile goes, and so in
Well,
terms of,
Yeah, maybe not everybody does, but.
Not everyone, right. Yeah,
but-
no, you're right.
in your community, you know, so Bonnie Lee knows, and
Yep,
goes to Bonnie Lee, right?
yep, but I often go to the one in Chester, just if I miss the one at Bonnie Lee, if I'm not there that day, I do go to the one sometimes Wednesday night. That's on Valley Road, so it's just good to have the
To know the
correct
exact
location
locations,
for
yeah.
others.
No, thank you, that's a great point.
And
Yeah.
we do have the.
Oh,
library-
Councillor Bremner's next,
Sorry,
if you're.
I'm done, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Weber, through you to our guest. Thank you again for this presentation. Are you in contact with our new director at the Zoe
I
Valley
am,
Library? Because I'm a
yeah,
board
yes.
member there. And we're very excited what the potential could be
Yes.
for a partnership there.
Yes.
And promoting opportunities together.
Absolutely.
So
I didn't include anything in the slide. It may have actually been after I sent this in last week, but she and I have met. We had lunch, and I think she's wonderful, the new director, and so she's definitely got a lot of ideas in terms of, bringing in the 2S LGBTQ+ community and the youth, and contacting with the schools and the arts groups. And I said, one thing that was I have a 2-year-old, and when my husband was on leave, the library baby groups, he went to Bridgewater and Lunenburg, because he was like, I just need out of the house, I need to see other adults, right? So I said, oh, have you thought about baby group? And she's like, oh yeah, I thought of that too. And so I think she's wonderful. And so I'm really excited for what she has planned. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities for partnerships. So we could do something like a summer reading club party in the garden. We could, have to figure out the logistics of things, but even up to having same page items returned there would be an easy one, because she'd just set them aside and we would come and pick them up. But potentially even something like having that as a holds pickup location for our items. That would be a little more, we'd have to get into getting them access to our checkout system and so on, but I definitely see a lot of potential there.
and I'm glad to hear that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yep.
Councillor Connors.
thank you. So I just Councillor Church's comments reminded me that I should check our front lobby, because I know I've, over the years, put our brochure,
Book
put the
and
library
yeah, thank
brochure
you. Yep.
in our own building, in the front entry, so I assume we would have noticed it there as well, in terms of a physical copy of that. So thank you again.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, any other questions, comments, people? Thank you very much for
All
all
right, thank
that
you.
do.
Thank you.
Okay, 9.1, okay, short-term rental licensing.
Morning, Council.
Morning.
I'm not near as exciting as the bookmobiles. Ready?
Bookmobiles and things like that are just fun stuff.
They're fantastic. Huge supporter, yeah. Ready?
Okay, yeah, we're ready.
Okay, so what I'm here today to discuss and bring before you is three, there's a lot in this, but there's three, we're looking for decision on three interconnected recommendations that staff are bringing back with regards to short-term rentals in the municipality.
Yeah.
And so we'll get to the three at the end. I was hoping to just kind of give a concise, I don't want to call it brief, but a concise overview of what has happened and the direction how we got here, so everybody can, because for the sake of new councillors, but also so for the people who have been here, because a lot has happened since this was originally brought.
We can't remember everything.
Exactly.
As you saw this morning, we couldn't remember the motions we made last week.
Yeah, it's fine. So basically, what I wanted to start with is the fact that we're bringing back the three interconnected decisions that we're bringing back to council is because staff has been reviewing the various direction that we received over the past year-ish, and through a policy review, essentially, we had to split this into three different concise and distinct pieces because of the fact of how this all needed to work together. So it was consistent so that the bylaws that we're bringing back are not speaking to things that they're not supposed to be speaking to, so that we can make sure that it's nice and concise. So that's why we have three, but they're all connected, and if you'll bear with me, we'll get there. So in the background of this, this all started, this short-term rental licensing piece, as part of the village plan review, which we were already talking about this morning. And the direction that council provided fairly early on in the village, well, I don't want to say that, but fairly early on last year in the village plan review was that they wanted to make sure that any regulation or licensing of short-term rentals was removed from the land use bylaw itself and dealt separately with its own licensing bylaw. So staff were given direction to go and start industry engagement to determine what a bylaw could look like and what we should be doing with that bylaw and what we should be looking at regulating and how it should all work
And
together.
this applies across the municipality.
Which applies, so we'll get to that, but yes. Yes, so it would apply across the municipality as well. At the same time, we were given direction because of the fact that we were also exploring the possibility of a marketing levy at the time. We were given direction during that engagement, to determine the level of support that was out there within the industry for the potential to introduce a marketing levy across the municipality as well. The reason why, to come back to Warden Weber's comment, as it currently stands in the municipality, we have two distinct ways of handling short-term rentals depending on whether they are in the wider municipality or if it's located within the village planning area. So in the village planning area, there are currently no regulations with regards to short-term rentals, whereas in the wider municipality, if you wish to have a short-term rental in your home, you have to get a development permit to apply for a change of use, and then different rules may apply to your short-term rental that are a little more stringent than they are in the village. So we wanted to ensure that we have consistency across the municipality, and that's the direction that we had received. So basically what we're bringing back for a decision is three different things, which I'm going to go through one at a time. Feel free to interrupt, though, to ask questions or get any clarification. I'm not going to read this word for word or anything like that, but I just want to give a high level overview of the three different pieces that we're asking for your decision on. So the first, and what prompted everything when we were talking about the village plan review, is the short-term rental licensing bylaw. So the short-term rental licensing bylaw, as I said, we were given direction to go out and determine what we should be looking at for regulations to make them consistent across the municipality and what the industry would look for from support, because as we heard this morning, one of the things that we're looking for is how do we build this as an economic sector in the municipality? How do we ensure that we have the accommodations so that we can increase overnight stays in the area, because that's how we can increase revenues to the area from tourism. But at the same time, we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with what's going on in their communities as well. So that's what we've brought back. It's the first piece is a short-term rental licensing bylaw. So we're going to be asking council, one of the first recommendation is to direct staff to proceed with developing this short-term rental licensing bylaw to bring it back for first reading. And it will come in tandem with the things that we're going to talk about later. But basically, when we did our engagement with industry to determine what we should do, we had a total of 36 survey responses. So we did a survey of all short-term rental operators in the area and invited them to participate. So we had about a 20% feedback rate for our survey. And we got a number of information, but then we asked people as well to follow up if they wanted to go more in depth and give us more details. So in total, our staff contacted 20 different operators in the area to kind of have a more in-depth conversation about how we could support them, what should be regulated, what shouldn't be regulated, what are the different things that we need to look at. So without reading these, basically what came back, and it was in line with the direction that council had already provided, were 5 kind of key themes that were very consistent across all the information that we heard. So the first one was with regards, council had already given us direction on this, but it was confirmed by the industry stakeholder meetings, is that there's no support for having a primary residence requirement for a short-term rental. So people want to be able to have a vacation home that they can rent out in the off-season or when they're not using it, so that they can help with ensuring that they're able to keep the home, for example. So there's a support for ensuring that this does not become something that you're only allowed to rent out a room in your house. So there was a lot of support for ensuring that we do not require a primary residence requirements for this regulation, for the license. The second key theme that we heard was to avoid duplication of regulations. So essentially, when we were talking to people about what needs to be regulated when it comes to short-term rentals, what are the potential issues locally, we heard things like noise or partying or open fires or ensuring that there was enough parking in the areas. And what we heard from our industry members were there are already rules and regulations in place for each of those things, and so to add additional regulations seems overkill, is essentially it's a duplication of regulations. So essentially what their suggestion was is to ensure that we refer to the existing regulations that are already there, not add anything on specifically for short-term rentals, but to make sure that we really focus on the fact that those regulations already exist. The third key theme that we heard, which kind of came out of that, is instead of adding additional regulations, try to focus on the professionalization of this as an economic sector. So really work with the industry to try to figure out how we can ensure that there are best practices in place so that people know to leave educational material, for example, in their homes for the rentals when people are coming there, so that they can ensure that people have the proper information about where to park, what garbage days are, things like basic information, where to find information about whether or not there's a fire ban on. So ensuring that we have some professional type materials for people in the area. And we'll come back to that as well when we talk about the marketing levy. But essentially, they also wanted to try to figure out ways that, well, it's contained in this license, how can we gather more data from the people who are visiting here? So what are occupancy rates? Where are people coming from? So when we're trying to market and encourage more tourism in the area, more overnight stays, do we know where people are coming from? How can we ensure that we're targeting our marketing materials properly? So we're recognizing that tourism is a professional industry that can grow in the area and bring additional revenues to the community. The fourth theme that came through was it goes hand in hand with professionalization of the tourism sector, but it becomes a tool to manage unprofessional behavior. So essentially, one of the things that council gave us direction at last year was around the idea is we want this to be able to give us a way to revoke or not renew a license for somebody who is a bad actor, is the way that it was phrased at the time. But what we have found, and we've been trying to monitor this internally as well, is that a lot of the supposed feelings that people might have about bad actors, we have not received. Really, we've had one complaint about a short-term rental in the last year locally. So it's not a widespread issue, but yet people believe it could become an issue. So the idea behind having this in place is that it gives us a process to follow where if we identify additional issues, that we can use it to either revoke or not renew licenses, but we don't need to necessarily pile on a lot of additional regulations for things that are not currently issues in the municipality.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Cole?
Just out of curiosity, so catch me up, because like you said, I'm new. The licenses, are they just in for it, or do they have to be renewed every year?
Yeah, so That's coming up,
Sure.
but the quick answer is, right now, we don't have a license, but our proposal is that it would need to be renewed every 3 years, is what
So
we're
if,
looking to do.
yeah, so if I rent my home and it's trashed and it's out, that's my onus, that's all
Yes.
my own onus. But if they're disturbing neighbors left, right, and behind, then it becomes the municipality's concern.
It becomes something that
Through
we
the
would be
property
able to
owner.
look.
Okay,
to
and
look
then
yes.
at that point, we as council could deny their license? Is that,
So we haven't developed
No?
the exact way it would do, but
am I getting ahead of your
council,
conversation?
not exactly, but council would be able to direct staff to accept or not accept.
I think it would
renew
depend how we set up the bylaw,
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
is what it
so
is.
the bylaw's not been set?
The
Not
bylaw's
set.
not been
Fair
drafted
enough.
or
So I'm
set
getting
or
ahead of-
discussed yet.
I'm getting ahead of
Where the direction, the decision we're asking for today is for you to give us the permission to go and actually bring back that bylaw for first
Okay,
reading.
I got ahead of you.
with
Thank
those
you,
decisions.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the last theme that we heard from our engagement was to ensure that the administrative burden is minimized. And the reason for that is because the province has taken a much more active role in this process already. And so if we have multiple layers of administration on this that are difficult for operators to manage, that we would likely see people drop out of this as an industry. And we are
Keep
already
it
having an issue
simple.
with enough accommodations at certain times of the year in the municipality. So what we are recommending is to bring back a short-term rental licensing bylaw to draft for first reading. And what it would do is it would walk through, and this goes back to your questions, is it would walk through what the application process looks like, what the general provisions are related to that, which I'll mention a couple of that we've already identified in a second, details on the term, which we are going to be recommending 3 years, and any grounds that will be there for revocation or denial of license. So that's the process by which the municipality would go through to either deny or revoke that license in that process. So it will also cover things like liability. That's part of the professionalization. We're going to make sure that every operator has a certain amount of insurance, for example. That's going to be something that we will be recommending. But basically what we are looking at to put in this license for your information is that we would want everybody to need to obtain and display their license. We would want to make sure that they, and I have to make sure I say this properly because this came from our team over enforcement, but they make sure that they have an occupancy permit and no open work orders with the municipality that are relevant to operating in a short-term rental. So essentially that we want to make sure that they're allowed to operate and that we don't have any issues with the facility being used for a short-term rental. Like I said, liability insurance and the other thing that they're not infringing on the rights of other people and endangering health and safety. So that's the short-term rental license piece, and I'll stop because I see some
Yeah.
questions. Yeah.
Della?
Yeah, the question I have, Brian, is have you looked at the fee structure? Are you probably doing a jurisdictional scan of any other municipalities? And based on that licensing fee, do you have some idea what the levy would be?
Yes. So you kind of answered the first question with your second question. Right now, the way that we are proceeding, and this is all based on providing direction according to the recommendations. Obviously, if we get different direction, we would need to adjust certain things. But for the short-term rental license itself, we are looking to not charge a fee for the license itself. That's our intention.
Okay.
And the reason for that, and we will get to this eventually, is that if we also proceed with the marketing levy,
Yeah.
the administrative costs that we can receive through that, so it would be paid by guests as opposed to operators.
Yeah.
So that's what our intention
Okay.
is, that's where we're heading as a direction. As far as the levy goes, it would be we're looking at 3% of the purchase price for the room itself, which would be paid at the point of purchase, not by the operator. So it would be at an Airbnb level, for example. But we'll get to that in a second with
Okay,
more
thank
details,
you.
if that's okay.
Thank you.
Andre?
Just wondering about what you envision the insurance would cover, what sort of damages would result from the operation of a short-term rental, and 2 million seems like a lot. How did you come up with that figure of liability insurance?
So the quick answer to that question is 2 million is the standard that we've seen in other bylaws around the province. So that seems to be what the requirement has traditionally been. The longer answer is when it comes to, so if you operate a short-term rental in your house, usually what you should have, if you don't want to necessarily have major issues if you're ever sued, would be some sort of liability, so that if somebody were to injure themselves on, like, slipping on a deck, or they were to burn themselves on a stove, or anything like that, that this would be the sort of thing that would be covered by your business and your commercial insurance through operating as a business. And usually that ends up being around 2 million is what most people have in place. Some have gone to 5. We thought that was overkill, so 2 million is kind of what we saw as the general accepted amount.
So we have a lot of businesses in our municipality, but we don't specify the amount of insurance they should carry. Why is it that this particular industry, we're interested in specifying how much insurance they carry?
So from the way that we're looking at it is the fact that we will be promoting these businesses through Tourism Chester, for example, and indicating that people are going there, and we are also offering them a license to operate, whereas we don't license most businesses in the municipality. So by us having given them a license, we are ensuring that from a professionalization standpoint, we have done some minimum checks to ensure that if somebody comes and stays at this location and we have given them a license, that means that we have confirmed that if somebody has an issue and needs to sue, that they have insurance that will cover that. So that's the reason
So
behind
they
it.
don't sue us for giving them a license when they weren't. Yes,
Just for simplicity, I think today the intent was to share what we heard in the consultations, to get some direction on developing a bylaw, and the contents of what's in that bylaw, how we structure it,
Oh, that all
all
comes
of that
back
would
here.
come back here, and probably for a discussion session for further detail. I think we're looking for direction and
to
from
just
council on
proceed,
Yeah.
go,
proceeding
go
and doing
develop
that,
this, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So do we want them to do it? I mean, we've been working on it for a long
Yes.
time, I
If
mean,
you don't mind, I have two more.
two more little things?
Two more things, because they are kind
Okay.
of, there's 3 different things and they're interconnected, so I just want to make sure. Okay,
Keep going.
So the second part, and if you ask any specific questions about this, I think Garth is behind me now. He stepped out for a second, but I'm hoping I don't know if he's behind me. But the second piece with regards to this is our land use bylaw amendments. So, and this comes from the municipal plan side. I believe they're already being integrated into the village plan to mirror this, but in order to have consistency across the municipality, the idea is we also need to ensure that we update the municipal land use bylaw.
To allow
Because
commercial activity.
right now, and if you see him making faces, it's because I'm indicating, I'm not saying this perfectly, but hopefully I do, but in the existing municipal land use bylaw, anybody who operates a short-term rental within their house gets caught up in the same rules and regulations that a traditional tourism accommodation like a hotel would have for things like setbacks and different things so if somebody built a house as a residence and 5 years later decided they wanted to offer a single room in their home for rent, right now they would need to ensure, they would either need to ensure that they meet the setbacks for the what applies to a hotel or a bed or an inn or a resort or something like that to their home. So it usually means wider setbacks from the
Neighbors.
adjacent property, and because of that, the definitions don't allow for a difference between these two things. So there are a few properties right now in the municipality that have been operating or would like to operate as an Airbnb and currently can't in the wider municipality because they're caught up as if they were a hotel. So we need to ensure that we make some amendments to the municipal land use bylaw to kind of sync the
Make that
definitions of the municipal land use bylaw with the village land use bylaw, which would then allow for the full regulation of short-term rentals within this new short-term rental license bylaw that we are developing. So it's kind of all connected. And hopefully he hasn't made too many faces behind me. Yeah.
No, Sam has you just touch.
Okay, seems to me some of these would involve building code issues. We might have different uses within a building. Like I'm presuming you could have a commercial building, but a portion of it you might want to rent as an Airbnb. So we have different uses within the same building, there's usually building code requirements.
So I'm not obviously an expert on the building code, so I wouldn't want to
So
speak
I'm just thinking
directly to that.
But we should consult with Brenton and just make sure that if we're gonna license something, and not just.
That it meets the building code.
Meet building code.
Yeah, and
The occupancy permit.
thank
Yeah.
you.
If they had an occupancy permit, it's that building code. And if they needed to change that, then they may need to apply for changes for a building permit for fire separation, for example, or something like that.
Yeah, and to Garth's point, for people at home who might not have heard it, that's why the language that we're looking at is that they must have an occupancy permit and no open work orders with the municipality that are relevant to the operation of a short-term rental.
So we're gonna separate occupancy for this particular use.
No.
I think we'd have to
We'd
consult
have to
with the building
consult,
officials.
yeah, we'd have to consult some different, with bylaw and get into that further, but the intention is that we're going to be talking about use, and if they're unable to get an occupancy permit for a piece of their property, they obviously wouldn't be eligible for the license.
Currently,
but I
most
don't-
of them are operating without meeting any requirements whatsoever. Yeah. Next piece?
So, and the final piece is the marketing levy. So we have kind of already touched on this. So as I mentioned, staff were given direction to go determine the level of support for the potential of a marketing levy. So we have done that. We did that in this past fall. We used the same survey and in-depth interviews with industry partners to kind of gauge the support that we had for this. From a survey point, we had a slight majority of people who were in favor of implementing a marketing levy, about 51%. And then when we went into the additional one-on-one conversations with partners that would like to provide more detail, that amount bumped up to 86%, so a vast majority. There were about, I think, want to say just 2 people who were not in favor of the levy when we went to the more in-depth conversations. What I do want to make clear, though, is that a lot of this support was either fully support or with the comments that you'll see on the next page, which had to do especially with the fact that they want to ensure that the following things are in place. So number one, they want to make sure that we're working with the industry on how the marketing levy dollars would be spent, that it can be guided by an industry organization. Our ultimate goal would be to set up an industry-led organization to be able to manage this for this. However, we do acknowledge that that may take more time than it takes us to implement the levy, so we might need to start with an advisory group that kind of helps us with this. The second point that was made by a lot of people is that if the marketing levy is implemented, it should be implemented at the point of purchase so that operators do not have to administer it themselves, figure out, adjust their prices, that they can just give their price to Airbnb as an example. Airbnb tacks on the marketing levy on top of it and sends it directly to us. They don't have to act as the middle person between that and send the money to us, because that, even though we would say, oh, it's still the visitor paying, from an operation standpoint, they might actually be the ones to have to eat it or lower their costs or whatever it is to remain competitive. So by adding it on top, it definitely is being paid by the visitor. The operator can continue to operate as usual. So that's something that they were really interested in. The one caveat I will put there is the fact that a larger operator, which they brought this up to us, like our biggest operator in the area, they obviously do the point of purchase themselves, and so they would be able to make that arrangement with us directly. And just because it came up last time, they told me, and this is why it was put in here, that they 100% support the implementation of a marketing levy. So I wanted to make sure that I put that on the record. They told me I should, and make sure I put that on the record. So that's number 2 about what they wanted to do. The third thing that came up is that as to how it would be spent now, and after I put this together, as I was preparing last night, I noticed I made a mistake in this here, very slight mistake. But essentially, while that industry-led organization would be the one to ultimately provide the recommendations for how this money would be spent, they do want to see the funds split. So we've put together a proposed split of how the funds could be split, and about 55% going to support local marketing and development of tourism within the municipality of Chester, about 40% going to a regional destination marketing organization that is
Yeah, 'cause
generally
we're
trying to.
working with all the other
to work-
municipal units to
exactly.
adopt the same thing.
And then about we've put it in as 5% of an administration fee, so
For
that we can cover
ourselves.
the costs of dealing with the license and all those different things. So there was a lot of support as well for using this to help develop mid-sized local events so that we can encourage overnight stays. And the final two things that really came out of this is that they want to make sure that, again, this goes to working with the industry, but transparency in how the funds are spent. And then also use this levy as a way to collect more data so that we can properly target whatever marketing and development we do for the industry locally. So I'll stop now because I can see some other people here, but that's where we go to the 3 different recommendations we have.
Abdallah, you have?
Yeah, just on the enforcement piece, when you're writing this, as an example, Andre's running an Airbnb. Obviously without a license, I'm aware of it because I can access it.
Obviously.
Just because I can see by the, because that'll be public record who was licensed. So you get a report saying someone's operating an Airbnb illegally without,
Yeah.
what do you do there? You set a bylaw? Is that gonna be written into this?
Yes, so my understanding, and to Tara's point earlier, we would put that in the bylaw when we
Okay.
bring it back,
Yeah.
and exactly how we would deal with that.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, the province has already set up some enforcement on this front as well, where we
We aren't
can.
allowed to do it without some kind of,
Yeah, so they've set up an enforcement where we can let them know that somebody's operating without a license.
And they'll
And
deal
they
with it.
can, they could,
Okay.
now, they have the capability of dealing
Well,
with it,
yeah.
but we'd also, so we're gonna have 2 different pieces of enforcement, both what we
Yep.
can do, but also what the province
Okay,
can do.
thank you.
Tina?
Thank you. So for me, I'm gonna go right back to the start of your presentation around the engagement piece, just again, so I'll make some notes for if I am talking with some operators or have a coffee shop discussion. So August to October, you sent out direct emails
Yep.
probably to all that we had registered through the Airbnb, probably a lot of different platforms. So they had the opportunity
Yes.
to turn back in. So from there, we received 36 responses in total, which again is not, it's on them to be back in terms of that engagement. Is it, am I going too far by asking if I could just see a copy of, not the list, but the survey that would have went out?
Absolutely.
Because then, if I'm having discussions, I can have that in my file to say, you would have received this, and I can verify that, because there's email threads. No, I don't have access to that, but I can, but again, it's all about people being engaged and providing that feedback. So, because I'm just one, I may be asked about this from the short-term, the operators in my community. So that would be great at any time if I can get a copy of that. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add one piece of information to that, in addition to the fact, so we emailed every operator
Yeah.
directly.
Yeah.
And we attached it to, I didn't mention this even though it's in the package here. There were changes made by the province back in the fall where they required proof of compliance from the municipality
Yes.
in order to continue to operate, which we set up an internal process, and I gotta give a big congratulations to all the staff, because we've gotten actually letters on how well we were able to do that
Yes.
as a municipality to
Remember.
manage that. And we attached the survey link directly to that call for people to get their license. So we received 36 responses to the survey, but 170 people have gone through with getting proof of compliance. So everyone who is currently licensed has received
Okay.
an invitation, or did receive an invitation to participate in the survey.
Councilor Brenner?
Thank you, Warden Weber, through you to our presenter, and thank you for the lot of work here then. I agree, staff has put a lot of thought into this, and I'm glad we've communicated. I'm having different thoughts. Some of it is the history of our municipality, our village alone. At one point, we had over 200 rooms a night when Chester was booming in the early days. And, this has such good potential and possibly scary for some folks. I won't deny that with with municipality becoming involved in a structure of that. But I definitely think this is something we have to get to the table and look at. So I'm willing to make a motion that we accept option number 1 to move forward, so we see what this potentially brings to us and what we can work with our communities and support, because again, we are going to grow somehow in this municipality. And if we're not better prepared to work with it and what we could gain or what we may lose, which would be worse, is not a great thing to
We
lose.
need
So-
to, we need to move forward.
So I'll make that motion.
Discussion. Seconded by Councilor Vino. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We are taking a short break, people, unless nobody wants one. Okay, we're live. We'll call the meeting back to order.
Can we test to see if Fred can hear us?
Yep,
No.
I can hear you.
Fred can hear us, okay. Okay, we're on 9.2, Fred, of course you know that.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And this is just a follow-up to the committee of the whole report on the 9th. It's just to add the former school properties to the wastewater area for Chester Basin. We need to repeal the existing bylaw, switch the maps up, and then bring it back. We're done.
Okay, so option 1, repeal infrastructure charges and replace with attached revised version. That's the one you want?
Yep, so.
Correct.
Notice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. First
Somebody-
notice.
Somebody want to do it? Okay.
Forgive my ignorance here, but what we did talk about was the expansion to the sewer area in Chester Basin, but this bylaw actually has a lot of maps. And we may have talked about them, the mapping for all the future water, but, sewer sheds, but I don't really remember having a comprehensive discussion of where the sewer shed boundaries are, because inside of this, they're actually, it actually speaks to more than just the Chester Basin piece.
Well, the maps do, yeah.
Yeah, and I just was wondering, are we going to spend a little time reviewing where these sewer maps are gonna?
The maps are currently approved, except for the Chester Basin one where the council gave us direction to change it, to expand it. So if you want to come back and review the full bylaw.
I really think we should, because some of that, as I was looking through, I don't have a problem with the Chester Basin, that was fine, I think everybody was fine with that, reading the body language, I'm not trying to speak for others, but, you know, looking over some of those maps again, it's like, you know, I don't know if that actually makes, where we delineated the start and stop of our future boundaries. I feel like we need to have a little chit chat or at least a workshop or something about, just to get our arms around that a bit better.
Yeah, I think Garth had something to add, if it's okay.
Just to add to that, so the growth strategy work that FBM is just wrapping up, and they're working on their final report now, which will be coming to council in March, speaks to a piece of that about aligning the sewer shed boundaries with the hamlet zone. So I think the discussion that you're speaking of now would fit really well into that recommendations that are in
Okay.
that report.
Okay, so we'll hear more on that. All we're really doing is changing the Chester Basin one at the moment.
I accept that.
Right.
Yeah, and then we'll add it to our priorities to come back and have the
I think-
larger
I
discussion.
mean, obviously, I think we have to talk about that.
Yeah.
So I'll make the motion.
Moved by Councillor Coolin, seconded by
I'll second it.
Councillor Church. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to 10.1, Regional Accessibility Plan Review. Okay.
Okay. Perfect. Okay,
A lot of
so,
paper.
it is, but hopefully you read through it before now.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's what I think. We won't be going into great detail anyways. So this report is further to your previous conversation with Ellen Johnson, our Regional Accessibility Coordinator. She came in to talk to you, yeah, okay. So in regards, so this is in regards to the Municipality of Chester's action items relating to the accessibility, to the Regional Accessibility Plan, so AKA our implementation plan. So for the benefit of viewers, I just want to mention that a few years ago, Council agreed to enter into a joint agreement with 4 other municipal units in Lunenburg County. From there, an accessibility advisory committee was struck and Ellen was hired and developed a regional accessibility plan that it was submitted to the province under the Accessibility Act. So the province requires us to review that plan, that regional plan, once every 3 years. So Ellen is in the midst of doing that and preparing actually to bring that back to you guys on March 11th. So to support that, we reviewed, along with the review, we also need to select a number of specific actions that we plan to do in the next 3 years. So to support that, we reviewed our own implementation plan, which you have a copy of, and came up with a list of items that we feel is reasonable to complete in the next 3 years. It doesn't mean those are the only ones we're going to complete out of the entire implementation plan. We just put those ones forward. Ellen asked us to select like 10 or 15 or so. So these, not our implementation plan in its entirety, but these ones will be submitted along with the,
They'll be added to the list.
yeah. So today, we are looking for council to hopefully give approval to these lists, or to this list, to bring it forward or make changes to it, or the options are listed here. So you can either approve our updated accessibility plan and the associated items to bring forward, or you can make changes, or just not do it at all. It's up to you.
Does anybody have any questions or issues on the recommended possible things that we're going to do?
So just for clarity, I think we're asking for two things. One is to approve the updated implementation plan
Yep.
for the Municipality of Chester, our own
Plan.
implementation plan, and then to pull 10, or that list of items out
Yep.
and submit those with the regional accessibility plan as an update, as the things that we'll be focusing on, not the only things we'll be doing, but the items we'll be focusing on for the next 3 years. And that'll go with the regional plan when it goes to the province for a review.
April 1st is the required
Any
date.
issues, people? I mean, yes. Yeah,
Do you need a motion for that?
yes.
Yes, please.
I'll
Option one.
move option one, develop and implement evidence-based for future infrastructure and service needs, along with related funding models to accommodate sustainable growth and levels of service.
You hit that word very well.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Asif, seconder. Seconded by Councillor Vino. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay.
Oh, yes, you want to have a
10.2. Revisions to council meeting operations. Well,
Yes, so at the January 23rd COW, council directed staff to prepare terms of reference for a new council meeting. So this new council meeting would replace the existing committee of the whole meetings. The terms of reference are attached to this report. The proposed council working session, again, anything in here is up for change for council, including the title. This was just what was put forward. And the intent of this session would be to replace the 2 monthly COW meetings with one scheduled as needed. Staff are recommending we do allot one of the Thursdays just for ease of scheduling as a placeholder. That would be tentatively unless, and canceled if not needed. This would have an agenda distinct from council meetings, tailored for strategic discussions, allow external presentations, but only from organizations or consultants related to the specific topics. No resident presentations at that meeting. Be live streamed, official minutes recorded. No motions will be made, but direction to staff will be documented and incorporated into future council reports that will be brought to regular council meetings. On this point, I did want to mention that because no motions are made, staff have added guidelines in the terms of reference to address any potential confusion that may come up in a session where consensus is not clear. So there's some guidelines in there that talk about one in particular, at the conclusion of each session, the chair would provide a summary of the key discussion points and confirm direction given to staff. Then this summary would be included in the minutes and brought forward in those future reports. So if consensus is not made and there's a couple different points of contention, then 2 options or 3 options would be brought forward, and then discussion would be had during a regular council meeting on those options. Council also gave direction to formalize the presentation application process for regular council meetings. So a proposed appointment request form is attached for council's review as well. So this, as discussed in the COW meeting, submission deadline would be 2 weeks before the preferred meeting. Applicants would specify their preferred date. Staff may decline applications if the agenda is too full or already contains multiple presentations, and presentations will be limited to 10 minutes with time for council questions. Staff would like to recommend council consider an exception on this point, just to align with the terms of reference for the council working session. In there, we have an exception that if council or staff extend an invitation to a presenter, such as the province or PVSC, that 10-minute presentation limit be not recommended in that point. It would be determined based on the request from staff.
Well, yeah, so we may ask somebody from the province to come in, it's gonna take a half hour.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm not gonna go through the terms of reference, but happy to answer any questions that council may have, but the recommended motions would be to give first notice for the attached terms of reference. And just a note, this would not be in effect until council officially adopted on a future February, or a future meeting, regular council meeting. And the second motion, that council approve the attached Municipality of Chester Council appointment request form. And that could be effective immediately, because that's a procedure, it's not a policy.
Okay, so we've asked for this. It appears to line up with what we asked for. Or are we prepared to make those motions? Anybody? Tina?
So, yeah, just a discussion, please,
Okay.
before we do any motions, if we
Yeah.
can. So, just remind me around, you said around the terms of reference not being official, or this wouldn't be in play until, would it be the next council meeting, or with terms of reference? I can't remember how many notices and how many readings and how many.
It would be. So if council is okay with what's in there, barring any, non-substantial changes, we have it on the February 27th regular council
Sure.
meeting, and then it would be in effect adopted at that
Okay,
meeting.
that makes sense. The next council, that's
Yes.
fair. That's fair. Okay, that's just the one question I have.
Okay.
Thank you. I believe I need to put a motion on the table that the date obviously would stay on Thursdays, yes. But I'm going to argue with myself now. I had suggested that the COW meetings were during the day as well, but for clarification, for non-confusion, like, as Adela has mentioned, like, maybe if they were back on Thursday evenings, once a month, that I'm kind of regressing now, that it would have a defined, no, this is COW and this is council. You know, I know that continuously it was, am I going to council or am I going to COW? So if it deemed to be once a month, there's a suggestion, a motion that it could be once a month in the evening on Thursdays. The public would understand what the actual meeting was, as opposed to, now everything's Thursday morning, as opposed to, that was it's just a motion that I'm putting on the table.
I just want to provide a little clarity. I mean, since these are discussion sessions, most of our staff will be required to be here. And if we're bringing in people from the province and outside sources, the daytime works a lot better for them.
Okay.
For this,
For a discussion session.
I'm just saying that. Now, I can't remember who.
She just made a motion to move it to the evenings.
No, she didn't.
She was discussion.
That was the discussion. There was no motion.
Did you make a motion?
I did make a motion.
Oh, did you? Okay. Seconded by Councilor Vino.
So, we have people lined up to speak.
Tina, you have your mic
Not on the motion,
on? Oh,
so if we want to deal with that one particular.
well, the motion is what's on the table.
That's
so-
right, so we can have
Okay,
discussion on the motion.
discussion on the motion. Councilor Vino.
Well, I see a benefit in moving into the evening for the aforementioned reason that it does distinctly break up the confusion, which has been part of the problem here, that this is not a council meeting, it is a committee meeting. And you will recall that almost all of our committee meetings are in the evening, and they're supported by staff. And we've successfully run council meetings in the evenings. We ran a meeting yesterday in the evening. So the idea that somehow we can't support meetings in the evening is a false argument in my view. So it's really a question of what it is that what problem we're trying to overcome. And if we're trying to differentiate this as a committee meeting, not a council meeting, then to me, that's a clear distinction, and I like it. It's clear and it's different.
Tina?
So actually, I do want to speak on the motion, so I apologize. As I voted a couple of months back, I'm in favor of having, of all people, again, geographically, I am in favor of having an evening time slot. And for me, I'm thinking of this meeting as a new cow, really. A new committee of the whole, for people listening, for acronyms. So I may see a difference after a while, but it's a new cow, a new committee of the whole, new cow meeting. So we had them on the table before for evenings, and I agree with Councillor Coolin and Councillor Vino around the differentiation in terms of the public, and I'm in favor of having this new cow in an evening time slot.
Councillor Church?
I believe the change of name, and if we have it during the day, the public are going to know they're not going to be doing presentations at that meeting. So I think we make it clear what the meeting is, that they should get it if we wanted to leave it as is during the day. And certainly the people that would be coming to the meeting may be more accessible during the day. I'm just thinking staff, members of other organizations, the province, what have you, that are coming in, that it would be more conducive during the day. We're going to change the name, and clearly the public are not going to be making any presentations or have the opportunity for that first 15 minutes of council to speak. So I think that would certainly, over time, make it very clear what it was. Thank you.
Councillor Reno?
I'll just say one last thing, that this idea that we can't have representatives from the province in the evening and is also a false argument, as many councils run all of their meetings in the evenings. You know, Town of Bridgewater, Town of Lunenburg, there are many jurisdictions that only have evening meetings, and the idea that you can't support those meetings by outside, you know, staff or whatever, that's not actually a legit argument in my view, because they certainly are supported by those outside stakeholders in whatever time slot are deemed appropriate, so.
Councillor Racer?
I just think for consistency for the public, we need stated days. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, I've already stated what I believe, and that's that these are the types of meetings where they're strategic in nature and will require way more staff than we do most of the time, and it'll make it just more complicated for them to do it in the evening. But any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated.
Thank you.
Well, Councillor Connors?
Certainly, so to continue the discussion, in terms of a name, what we're going to be calling this. So we can go around the table, and we all need to pipe up and so on. So I'm favoring policy and strategy. That's kind of what I like.
I'm happy with that. The name doesn't matter too much.
So second thing that I would like to, we can, I think the warden.
Well, I mean, I don't care. I mean, it's just, I don't want it to get complicated that we can't deal with something on at that night that isn't policy or strategy, you know, if we need to. No, there's no decisions, but I know that that's the general basic intent of it, but there may be something else come up that isn't policy and strategy. Sorry.
The different, or I'm not sure legally, but there may be a difference between calling it a committee and a session, because committees make motions. So if we do want to steer clear of the confusion around motions, we may not want to call it a committee. That's the only.
Just policy and strategy.
Session.
Instead of council working session, policy and strategy session.
Okay.
And in parentheses, Tina's rule, right? You got Rob Bob's rules.
Okay, no.
Okay, people, so are we going to give first notice to the terms of reference?
With the change to the title.
Change the title? Okay.
I am strongly believing it's about education through this organization too, so I would love to see this meeting be ran by the deputy warden to give some education from the warden to the deputy. I think we appoint a deputy warden for a reason. I know it's to fill in when the warden's not available, but I also think education is important to learn positions and what responsibilities people have for structure, and forbid that anything would happen to our leader, but at the same time, if something did, we'd have a little more preparedness and understanding of that position. And I believe that's something we should be considering at this time, that meeting would be directed and managed by the deputy warden of the appointment of that year.
What policy change do we have to make to do that? Unless I'm not here, I'm in charge.
I'll make that a motion. Second.
Discussion?
What is our current policy?
I don't know.
Is there anything in the policy with respect to the chair?
It's in the terms of reference, so it says that the warden or designate, so if we wanted it in the policy, that would be a change to the policy, or we could leave it as is, and it could be decided on in the meeting and voted on the meetings for the,
Yeah, the designate would be, yeah,
so then we would change that in the policy, yep.
good.
Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to echo Councillor Bremner's comments, I'm in support of the motion, and I've been speaking the words of succession planning for many, many, many years. And for me, it's healthy organization, it's succession planning for us here at this table. So I believe in the motion. Thank you very much, Councillor Bremner.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, are we going back to giving first notice?
I'll make that a motion that we give it first notice.
With those two changes, yes.
The changes are that the name and the, yeah, okay.
Just one thought.
Yeah,
Typically, the deputy would step in from the warden if the warden couldn't chair. But if the deputy couldn't chair,
then I'm coming back to the table. What else would I do?
I guess it would be the reverse.
Yeah.
Just-
Okay, sure.
Sorry, what was that saying?
Well, typically.
If you're sick, I'll take over.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. And the second one is approve the attached municipal council appointment request for effective. Yeah,
I'll make that a motion.
yeah. Seconder,
Second.
discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Okay. 10.3, changes to operating and capital reserve funds.
Good morning, Council.
Didn't we just do this?
So what I have for you today is a request for direction. This is some would consider them fairly inconsequential changes to the reserves, but what I'd like to have you do today is to approve the changes as presented here to the capital and operating reserves, as well as the creation of a consistent set of policies that dictate, the use of each of our reserves to kind of make it more clear what they're for, how they're funded, et cetera. So under the current situation, You can see what our current reserve structure looks like from operating and capital with balances as at the end of the most recent fiscal year, as well as applicable bylaws, policies as they are relevant. Not all of our reserves are established under a policy or a bylaw currently, which is part of why I'd like to see a consistent set of policies covering our reserves. The changes that I'm proposing that we make are as follows. So the general operating reserve, currently we have two subsections of that reserve that are separately tracked and maintained within the general operating reserve. Those are the solid waste operating surplus or deficit, which is currently at a balance of, well, I say currently, I mean end of the last fiscal year, $1,795,887. And then there's the approved allocation of the PACE lending program of $2.4 million. Of which there was a balance of just a little under that $2.4 million at year end. In addition to carving those two pieces out, we also have a general portion of the wind energy reserve that I'm going to propose we actually just allocate that directly into the general reserve. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next section on the wind energy reserve. So the wind energy reserve is based on policy P79, which is actually about what we do with wind energy revenue. It doesn't actually specifically reference reserves, but the way that we've implemented that is that we've created a reserve with 3 separately tracked streams within it that all receive the same funding each year and then are used for the various different purposes, right? So there's the community development that generally gets used for the capital grants out of council, the economic development portion, which is used for various economic development activities as approved by council. And then there's the general portion, which is really just a second general reserve. Then there's the asset retirement obligation reserve. So this is something that we were required to set up a couple of years ago when the new accounting standard came in for asset retirement obligations. The vast majority of that reserve is funded related to the landfill liability, which is something we had already previously had to fund. And then there's a smaller portion of $464,000 that is to be funded, and this was discussed at budget session last year, to be funded in combination between different sources that relate to the source of those retirement obligations. So about $46,000 from the sewer reserve, $118,000 and change from the wind energy reserve for the wind turbine, and then $329,000 from general operating for the other buildings with potential asbestos remediation, those things. So if you look down into the financial budgetary implications, you can kind of see what the reserves will look like with all these recommended changes. Overall, the operating reserves and capital reserves and the total balance all stays the same with the exception of that $464,000 that moves from operating into capital. That's the asset retirement obligation portion that was not related to the landfill. And you have some other options. You could ask for more information or you could provide direction other than what's been presented here. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Tina?
Make sure that I'm really clear on it. The wind energy reserve, that 7.5, that is the piece that we have, the 1/3. In our own reserves, correct? It's not the economic development reserve nor the community.
So the wind energy reserve on page 1, the
Yes.
current 7.59
Yeah.
million,
Yeah.
that is the combination of those 3 streams.
Oh, the combination of the 3.
So it's the total of the community development, the economic development, and the general portion of that.
So we'll still be able to, again, sorry, I'm not an accountant or a bookkeeper, we're still gonna be able to differentiate and know what we're dealing with annually with the amount of reserve, because I know that Chad will reference that when we deal with major capital as well as community capital, and he'll remind us how much we have there, as well as when we do economic development discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
Aaron will be able to
He's
remind
just
us.
changing the
And actually, this is intended to make that an easier and more understandable
Excellent.
process. So each of those, what is now a stream within a single reserve that we track internally but not as a reserve balance, will each be their own separate reserve. So the totals in those, what we're calling streams or portions now, isn't changing.
Okay.
So you can see on page 3
Yep.
that the community development reserve would go to a balance of 1.25 million, and the economic development reserve would be 2.9 and change.
Okay.
And then the difference, I think there's a 3 point something
To the general reserve.
that is the general portion. The total of those three amounts is that 7.5 that you see on the first page.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it essentially eliminates the wind revenue reserve, separates
That's
it
right.
into the three streams
Okay.
that they actually.
Yeah, so it
Thank
creates
But
the
we
two
still
new
know
ones.
exactly what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Just, it aligns more closely with what the policy for wind energy revenue actually says, in my opinion, and makes it easier to report on and track the individual
Makes
streams, because
perfect
they really
sense.
aren't the same reserve, they're just funded through the same source, which is a lot easier to do if we do these changes.
Makes so much sense.
Okay, Councillor Bremner.
Thank you, Warden Weber, through you to our presenter. First of all, I appreciate this update, because to me, this is just housekeeping and cleaning up and modernizing where we've been a little bit maybe not so modern at the time. So I'm prepared to make the motion that we take option number one, approve the changes as described above, and deal with it from there.
Okay, moved by Councillor Bremner. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Church. Discussion?
I just have a question.
Oh,
if I
sorry,
can,
you were
if
first.
you don't. Can you talk a little bit about the sewer reserve? It's one, so are we required to have a reserve in that account, or?
So the sewer reserve is just, because the sewer function of this organization is a self-funded area.
Yes.
Right, it doesn't impact the general tax rate, it's funded through the EDUs, the universal sewer rate.
That's right.
And so each year, at the end of the year, whatever the surplus or deficit is, in the sewer operations, gets closed to that reserve. And so if we are under budget on.
Taken out.
Yeah, then we put that extra into the reserve to be used in the future, and if we are over budget, then we would fund that shortfall from that reserve.
So, I mean, have we historically had a dip in reserve for that sewer?
In my experience, it's generally been a modest
Okay.
contribution to reserve. We generally try to aim for a zero
Yes,
on that.
okay.
And in recent history, we've been a little bit in a surplus for each of those years. So it's, what's the balance at right now?
Okay.
It's at $1.6 million or so.
Thank you.
Andre?
Yeah. You missed, Councillor Asif, you missed the sewer wars. It was prior to your time when we were debating the universal sewer rate and the whole discussion about, you know, at the time, we had six different.
All different
It
rates,
was
all
almost as
different
bad as our street light
policy.
policy, where every jurisdiction had its own way of taxation, and your area was chronically, in Western Shore was chronically underfunded, and then those deficits were just being absorbed by the general rate, so people with on-site sewage systems were sort of, through their taxes, paying for people on sewer, and the universal sewer rate corrected that, and, you know, we do hear some grumbling sometimes that their sewers, you know, they have to pay whatever it is now, $700 or whatever dollars annually. But this is I think a prudent way of doing that, and I wanted to give that sort of brief history for the benefit of those who weren't around. I was just wondering, because I'm a bit oblivious to this, if I'm honest. I know that in development, if you have a subdivision greater than X number of lots, you're required in our bylaw then to contribute to the parkland or reserve. But what are we using that fund for? Where does it go?
So up until fairly recently, it's been just such small contributions into there that there hasn't been a whole lot of balance. So really it hasn't been used for anything. I am looking at, like, we're working on financing for the next 5-year capital plan right now, and that is one of the options I'm looking at for some of that stuff, but the answer is really not a whole lot. Unless there's history from before my time in Chad.
No, but it is intended for parkland, so like with some of our current strategic directions, if there's, properties to be purchased for new parkland or any park-related projects, that is a potential source of revenue to use for the project.
Land purchases for new parkland and stuff like that. I can't remember if we've used it for.
Scheduled to undertake a subdivision bylaw review too, and the intent is to look at that policy around, currently, it's at the developer's choice if they provide land or cash. And so we're gonna look at that, tighten up the policies around what land we would accept, or potentially look to say just cash out.
Yeah, I think many municipalities are moving away from the land model just because.
Just taking cash.
Usually developers give the chunk land.
And our
Poorest
staff
piece
is,
they own.
Yeah, here's a big wetland for you to own now.
our staff has identified that, so when we go through the subdivision bylaw review, that'll be probably one of the recommendations coming out of there, is to strengthen our subdivision bylaw policies, so, or requirements, so that rather than getting to choose parkland or cash, it's cash first unless blah, blah, blah.
Unless council wants it.
Unless council wants a piece of land, yeah.
I see, yes, yeah, that would be good, and that may actually help to grow that fund a little bit faster if people aren't just giving us their wasteland.
Okay, that, I'm
Okay. Now I forget where we were. We had a motion on the floor? Yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you, council.
Okay. 10.4, safety report.
Is that on or? Yep. Good morning, council. Just the opportunity to bring you up to date on our health and safety performance for 2024 and our plans for the 2025 work plan. I won't go through all of the report, but the information is there. I just wanted to touch on a couple of highlights. One is our incident review. We had 15 employee-related incidents and 13 non-employee incidents recorded in 2024. Of the 15 employee-related incidents, we had 8 in total with minor property damage to MLC structure, heavy equipment, and/or vehicles. But luckily, there were no injuries to any of our employees in those incidences. 3 incidences of slip, trips, and falls, which is an ongoing hazard that we do have. We have purchased ice cleats. We've made improvements in the walking and walkway maintenance and de-icing, and also in the housekeeping areas to counteract those. 2 incidents involving minor back strains, which were ergonomic related issues. And also we had 2 environmental conditions. One was due to a heat exhaustion during the summer months, where we had one of our employees not totally heat exhausted, but he was having symptoms from that, so we made corrective actions in there. Of the 13 non-employee, these are where we monitor our contractors and our incidents related to them working on our premises. So we had 7 incidences involving contractors and resulting in property damage and some minor injuries. We had 3 landfill fires. 2 of those were very minor, and 1 required a response from the fire departments. And we had 3 incidents involving members of the public, which were actually down in the sense of the public drop-off areas. We've made great improvements in that area, but we did have a couple of minor incidences there. The other one was related to involving some harassment of our staff at the annex building. So, and we're taking corrective actions on that. Related to the corrective actions, our ongoing ergonomic training and assessments continued in 2024. We've made some purchases and improvements in workstations, and we're looking at the expansion of the program to non-office employees. We have people working in heavy equipment 8 hours a day, and there's some ergonomic and repetitive motion issues that we're trying to look at. We'll be doing that in relationship to training sessions with WCB. No serious hazard conditions related to the environment. We do have a scent policy which will be coming to you in the near future, I believe, so we're working on that. related to improvements in air quality. The overall there, as of January 2025, we've exceeded 195,000 hours of work without any serious injuries, which is another record. And we're well on our way to 200,000 hours, which is the next milestone. So in pretty good record there. Just an update on the corrective actions we're looking at ongoing. Down in the Chester Yacht Club area, there's work by staff going on some improvements related to the beautification and upgrading there. So that's, the initial corrective actions are all in place, so we don't have any hazards there at this present time. As I mentioned, the ongoing work at Kaiser Meadow drop-off, we've made improvements and ongoing improvements in that area. And of course, the landfill fires, all we can do is continue to educate the public and work with our sorting stations to improve their procedures if we can get the hazardous stuff out of there. So that's an ongoing struggle.
Yep.
Out of the investigations and recommendations, there's 34 recommendations from staff being worked on right now. These are relatively minor because of the investigations, but it would be improvements going forward. Related to the inspection programs, we're up to date as of 2024 and into our 2025 program. And with respect to workers' compensation, I'm pleased to announce again that we are in a merit position and well below, 19% below other municipal units, which is a feather in our cap for us. We continue to do that. The actual municipal rating went from 359 to 407, which was another significant increase. So our program has helped us offset that, which is good. Just a quick update on the joint occupational and some of the initiatives there. We're completing some corrective actions for our core certification in 2025. We went through an external audit and we're working on making some minor corrective actions. One of those would be in the new areas which are just coming on now with related to return to work programs, which will be legislated sometime in the summer. So we're making some corrective actions there. We're continuing to improve the employee safety orientation program. As new people come on, we're bringing them through not only an onboarding, but safety orientation, which is improving our conditions. In relating to training, we did quite a lot last year, particularly in the public works area, ATV, chainsaw. We've upgraded our confined space training, and also looking at the working from heights training, which will be ongoing this year. The one big thing from a general staff point of view, though, was we went through a series of de-escalation trainings for some of the incidences that we had. Yeah. So we did that, and we extended that not only from frontline staff, but staff that were in general working with the public. So that's an improvement going forward. So. Also, we've implemented the respiratory program for the public works in Kaiser Meadow staff. We were falling a little bit behind on that, but we've upgraded all the equipment, put them through training, and that program is well on its way. And we did recognize staff with the last milestone of 130,000 hours, and we'll be doing that again, hopefully at the 200,000 mark. So that's a review of last year's program, and just a quick look at the 2025 program. The actual budget that we're putting together is equivalent to last year's, but there's a shift in some of the accounts, and we're putting a more focus on the upgrading the training budget. We have some management training to do and also some supervisory that we want to get done in 2025. So the budget number is about the same, within a couple of $1,000s, and but there is a shift to
Shift in the way you're
in
spending.
the, so with an extra focus on staff training. So I'm open to questions.
Well, I mean,
they-
looks
what-
like we're doing good.
Yeah, I'd like to is accept the year-end report, and if we would look at the motion of the options there to continue work on the operating budget for next year. So.
You have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Coolin. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Good.
Okay, now
Thank
you're on
you.
to water.
Yep. Second report. This will be pretty quick.
Yeah,
I've
it is
been
what it
trying to
is.
keep everyone up to date through the program. We did end the program. We started September the 9th, week 1, and we ended December 15th, week 14. The program provided coupons for 4 liters of water, bottled drinking water per person per household, up to a maximum of 4 per household. The overall program, we recorded 346 dry or low-level, poor-quality wells. We issued 26,900 coupons from September through to December. We had a redemption rate of about 88% of those coupons. There are 930 residents participating, and the coupons redeemed during the program came to a value of $47,655. So that's plus or minus a couple of dollars on the reconciliation. The distribution, the top 3 areas of reporting, there is a map in the report. The top 3 areas were District 3, 4, and 5. Very little in some of the other districts. District 6 was very low on reporting, and District 7 had a little bit lower number. The dry well versus, or the dug well versus drilled wells, actually 33 were reported, which is only 9.5% of the total wells reported. On that, I think there was Tim is still there, but there was an uptake in the lending program. So we're seeing some positive feedback on that, which is good. And I understand that that's up for discussion in the future months. But we did see an uptake. We did provide a lot of information and move forward on getting that program out there. So we did see an uptake. That is really the summary. The rest of them are in details by week if you're interested. So as you say, we were funded for 20, so the cost variance for this year was 27,000, and then that'll be funded, I would imagine, through Tim from on reserve. So.
Well, it was an interesting year, so.
Yeah, absolutely, and no forecast yet for next year, but we'll see.
Well, at least there'll be snow on the ground that will melt this.
Exactly, yeah. So I did personally thank all of our retailers, and also the staff that did participate, because it was a lot of work to try and get all those bottles out there, but, yeah.
Any questions, anybody? Tina?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they all put in a good effort, and they've all participated, yeah.
Okay, so I think a motion to receive the report, I guess would be it.
Yeah, it's just an information report.
Yeah. Somebody want to move it? Moved by Councillor Coolin, seconded by Councillor Asa.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Get in there. Okay, 11.1. The Municipality East Hants, Mr. Lohr regarding Chester's letter, and he's basically supporting what we had to say.
Yep, this was a letter from the Municipality of East Hants, just supporting the letter that we had copied to all the municipalities regarding the code of conduct, just for your information.
Nice to have somebody supporting it. Okay, 11.2, Luke Hanson McDonald regarding watercourse setback changes, and I think we've kind of dealt with that.
Yeah, so this is just a letter regarding the watercourse setbacks, the new draft village plan. When you see it coming to you, has currently, the current plan right now is an 8-meter setback around watercourses. The municipal plan has a 20-meter setback around watercourses. So in the plans, the draft plans that you've seen for the village up to date, up to now, they've all included the 20-meter setback to mirror what's currently in the rest of the municipality. And so the one that you'll be seeing coming forward will maintain that 20-meter setback with an ability to reduce it to 10 meters. So there will be some flexibility in there to reduce it to 10 meters. So this letter is just saying requesting that it be kept at the existing 8 meters. But the drafts that you've already seen up until date have had that 20 meters in it.
So we'll deal with that time comes.
Yep.
Okay, and Fire Services Committee regarding fire emergency service draft budget. Anybody speaking to that, or we're just, okay?
Thank you, Warden Weber, through you to the council. I attended the Fire Services Committee annual meeting a couple evenings ago, as well with Councilor Reno and Councilor Church, and was very impressed with the presentation. They're moving forward with their plans for firefighter safety, a new building, and improving with a 20-year contract, as we know, that's been signed, and 5-year planning ahead to get caught up in a number of ways. There was also much discussion around costs and increasing costs with the tariffs that possibly could come on, and most of the manufacturing, fire service equipment, apparatus, et cetera, comes through the American market, so could get interesting, but of course they're going to balance what they're doing. They've presented their draft budget, which in my opinion, with fair confidence that they've done a very good review of it, looks to be in order and in proper structure. So I would invite my other councillors, if they feel they'd like to address that they go ahead.
So do we need to approve, we need to approve?
Not yet.
No,
Not yet.
it's just where it is.
Yeah. It's just an update for information.
Okay. Well, Councilor Reno has.
I'll repeat the comment that I made in the meeting, because the draft proposal is to increase the rate to 11.4 cents or something, I think, per 100, which it still makes it one of the lowest fire tax rate in the municipality. And I guess my commentary was that we can anticipate a very high cost for replacing our building in the near future, and the need to start to build reserves. I think I think it would be prudent to actually raise that up just a bit more, just start to put a bit away. I understand the service has run very frugally over the years, and they really have held no reserves to speak of forever, and we enjoyed a tax rate, a fire tax rate of like 6 or 7 cents for a long time, and now it started to climb. But I think I posed this concern to the committee members, and they answered by saying, well, they weren't sure what the costs were going to be at, and et cetera, but I envision no future that there isn't going to be costs that are outside of the scope of what they've been doing, in terms of just replacing their their equipment and trucks and apparatuses or whatever, I'm not sure why they won't push it just a little further, and nobody wants tax, of course, but it seems like we're postponing the inevitable, and I feel like when the time comes that we have to then fund the new building, then it's gonna be a lot at the last minute to try to sort of catch up, and having sure would be nice to go into that construction budgeting time with $1 million in reserve instead of, 100,000. So those are my comments. Those are just my feelings on it, and I'm not everybody clearly, but.
Councillor Church?
Thank you. Just one comment. You're still receiving revenue from the islands because of the fireboat that was in existence, which is no longer. So there might be a liability there that maybe that should be removed if they're not providing the service. Just maybe a legal opinion on that. I don't know if they intend to leave that in there, but we should look at that because they don't intend to replace the boat to service the island. So I don't know if that creates any liability.
I haven't been involved in the discussions, but I believe they're coming to present the budget when the time comes, so you could ask them that question
Yeah,
then. But what I see in this budget is no Fire Island, no rate for the boat tax.
Okay.
But they would be included in the general village tax.
Well, I think that like the islands in Chester Basin, Western Shore are all.
Included in the general
Yeah.
rate, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Tom?
Warden Weber, thank you. Through to council. To answer a couple of questions, Councilor Vino is not wrong by any means. The fire service throughout the municipality has worked diligently. The men and women that have volunteered and the community support through other parts of the organization have saved the taxpayers millions of dollars over the years. Their efforts and their energies and their amazing work is incredible, and we can't thank them enough. So I do understand where you're coming from, Councilor Vino. There's been that balance for many, many years, and I can speak on the Chester situation. For years, they've been very low and kept funding going through different means and different ways and hard work of the firefighters themselves. That time is changing and has changed, so we have to be aware of that. And I warn our community, there will be an increase, and I understand their concerns, but we have to move forward for the next 50, 60 years of visioning and get them out of this current building that is not safe and is definitely outdated and everything else. As for the fireboat, the Chester Fire Service through the municipality, working together over many years, did provide a water boat that went outside the inner islands, but now that boat is out of commission and actually being put as surplus, and there is no funding, as the CAO has mentioned. The Chester Fire Service still has an inland boat that they do for, local issues without firefighting capability, but still do rescue on the water, to my understanding. So there is some clarification there that I think the public needs to understand. And my understanding, yes, to the CAO, there will be a presentation made by the Fire Services Committee on that very topic, and there'll be some direction from them coming. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Rice?
Yeah, I guess you're talking about an increase for fire rate in that district. I guess it's, I know in Western Shore, we have a fire commission and we set the fire rate, and the village commission does it here, I guess.
Well, no, this new committee does.
So you set it as a committee? Well, no, it's a committee, but don't they, so the ratepayers you don't have a ratepayers meeting like in other areas, and I'm a little confused.
So I'll explain it. So,
Yeah,
the new fire services agreement that we have in place has established Chester Fire Advisory Committee, I believe it's called. And that committee is 3 appointed members from the Village Commission, 3 from the Municipal Council. And they act similar to a fire commission. So they propose a budget. Fire commissions have the ability to set the rate, so all council would do would be apply that rate. This committee does not have that rate setting ability, so they will present a budget to both the village commission and to the municipal council, and then you will approve the rate on the recommendation of the fire services, or the Chester Fire Advisory Committee. And so that's when they will come and present that budget to council. And they are required per the agreement, or per the agreement we have in place, they are required to hold a meeting, a ratepayer meeting. And that, I believe, is what happened on Tuesday.
Okay,
So, yeah.
perfect.
Okay, Tom?
Warden Weber through the CAO2 Council. A very good explanation. That's exactly the way it operates. Just want to clarify one thing. This committee is called the Chester Fire Services Committee, not the Chester Advisory, because Fire Advisory does become a bit confusing, and it is for the other councilors. I understand your confusion in the way this operates different than your own communities. Each fire service district has a structure that they set up themselves. Some go under the Rural Fire Service Act, some go under the Village Commission, some go through the municipality, some go through a number of different options. So this is a topic we could spend hours and hours and hours and hours and go around in circles.
We
I want
approved
to
this
keep this.
structure a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, this is something we need to keep very simple here today, and I thank you for everyone to their patience in clarifying the questions, and I hope we have. Thank you.
All right, they'll be in to see us. Yeah. Okay, we're moving on. We gotta keep moving. 12.1, planning report. Maple Cottage Development, oh, well, a bunch of stuff.
Hi, everyone.
Hey,
Yeah, so you've heard some past reports on this, proposal by the Chester Heritage Society. So they would like to put a rental unit in the cottage building on the Lordley House Museum lands. Right now, the policies and zoning don't permit one unit on the lands in the institutional area and the institutional zone. So amendments have been drafted and
To allow it to take
public
place.
comments have been provided,
Oh,
so.
sorry, I don't, maybe you could speak in the mic, because I don't think it'll come through probably.
Yeah, it's very sensitive, it will catch you.
Oh, well, okay.
Hello?
Thank you, because I couldn't hear.
So, in order to make this
Oh, boy, she's
happen, so amendments to the village secondary planning strategy and land use bylaw are necessary to permit this one unit. And council directed to do that as a site-specific one property permission rather than looking at the broader institutional policies and regulations. So there'd be an approximately 550 square foot apartment on the main floor and non-public museum use in the rest of the building. There's existing services that will be utilized, municipal sewer and private water. The heritage character is not changed. And there may be a need for a parking space once they come back for a permit, but there is some space on the lands to accomplish that. And the development officer will have those discussions at that time. We don't see any potential for land use conflict from this proposal, having one unit. There was some talk about the public washrooms where the public use the washroom that will be converted for the unit. So there's been, outside of this amendment process, there's been discussions with the building inspectors and they've gone over and looked and they've come up with a solution for that, which is having a staff washroom in the basement of the cottage because there's water hookups there. And then they could fit an accessible porta potty or whatever the term is when the museum's actually open for the public. And that could fit on the existing patio with accessible ramps. And that kind of leads back to a point we'll bring up later about maximum square footage and things like that. And we had a public information meeting on December 4th, and there was no attendees, and we haven't heard any opposition to the proposal. And we had a Village Planning Advisory Committee meeting on January 14th. And the committee recommended moving forward with the proposal. However, they recommended removing the maximum square footage for the unit in the land use bylaw amendments, but it's also mentioned in the draft policies as well. So that's why there's two different sets of option or amendments. So the amendments, just quickly, the amendments would add a preamble to section 3.5, Parks, Recreation, Institution, and then also a policy in there, as well as a new subsection of the institutional zone in the land use bylaw, stating that this is permitted and which lands it is. So if you want to maybe bring up attachments A, and we can kind of go through the difference between the staff recommendation and the Village Planning Advisory Committee recommendation. So if you go down to the underlined part, halfway down the page, so the underlined part is the new policy preamble. And you can see the first sentence, as an apartment rental unit on the main floor, is mentioned in there. And if you go to the next page, there's a policy at the bottom there. And again, mentioning the maximum floor area could be applied in the land use bylaw. And then if you go to the next attachment, so the next page, I guess, and go down a little bit. So that's the new site-specific permission, and as you can see, there's the maximum square footage. And then if you go to the next page, please, this is based on the Village Planning Advisory Committee recommendation. If you just go down to the underlined part again, and you can see that it's just an apartment rental and doesn't mention the main floor or the maximum floor area. And again, to the next page, please, down at the bottom. That's the added policy that's slightly changed. And then the next attachment is the land use bylaw, which if you go down, it doesn't mention the main floor or the maximum square footage. So the application asked for one unit on the main floor. And I've also did the report and all that with the understanding that this was one unit on one floor, not like the whole house, not the basement and the main floor. I feel it's very subjective. If in the end, I don't have a problem with either VPAC or the staff recommendation, but I feel like this is what they've asked for, so.
You're recommending what they've asked you to get
And
approved.
there's
And
an
what you went
interest
to the
in.
public with, and they had no issues.
I haven't had any issues from the public, no. So I guess I don't see it that big of a problem if they incorporated the basement into it, but I've always taken it as one small apartment unit, not multiple floors with several other residents, a bigger resident
Well, we're
pool.
giving them an exception.
But
as
I definitely see the point of the committee's recommendation that should we just leave this a bit more open-ended in the future, they could have more flexibility to change and not have to come back for an amendment. So, so the recommendation before you is to give first reading and set the date for the public hearing. And then there is a second brief part about waiving the fees as well. So they've asked for the fees to be waived in their application letter. And the municipal fees policy does allow it to do that. And so we would like council to make a motion to waive these fees. Usually we put this at the request for direction, but it was just kind of missed. Then they're working on development permits and building as well. I'm not sure if this is the forum to have you approve waiving the fees for that, but it was brought up by the development officer that is it possible at this time to do that. So those are the two decisions. Setting the date for the public hearing and either having the maximum floor area or not. And then second one is to waive the fees.
Councillor Bremner.
Would you like,
Oh, sorry, Tina.
I'm just looking at the list.
No, I was just looking at what I saw.
So I'm not making a
with it.
motion, I'm thinking Councillor Bremner may, but I just want to make an observation. I'm pleasantly, last evening, or whenever I read this component of the package, pleasantly surprised that VPAC was supportive. Wonderful. And not only that, they were also added the comments around or wanting to look at the more flexibility or the increased flexibility. So that's wonderful, VPAC. Because I know that we had a presentation from an individual that, you know, brought to our attention about not being able to necessarily control the number of people that live within a unit and their concerns around water usage. So I'm very happy, thank you.
Councillor Bremner.
thank you, Warden Weber, through to our presenter. Can I combine these two motions into one? Is that okay with you, or would you like two motions? Is that what you're looking for?
Well, if they're both recommendations, so if we just accept the recommended motions, we should be good.
So I'd like to make a motion that we take option number 2, and then in option 2, option number 1.
Which waives the fees?
Which waives the fees, that's correct.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So those are my motion I'll put on the floor. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Oh, sorry, yeah. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Thank you.
So just for the waiving of fees, that's just for the development, for the amendment application?
Was that, yeah, it's
For the building development.
for building
fees
permit
as well?
and fees
Yeah,
as well.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. I think I'm on to the last page of this stuff. Sylvia. Well, I mean, it's been a busy morning.
We have a new private road name in Mill Cove. The road name is Karam Lane, and we have no objections from the fire department or Public Works. It's a unique road name in Nova Scotia as well.
Anybody got a problem with this? Somebody want to approve it? Moved by Councillor Coolin, seconded by Councillor Asa. Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. How you doing, Sylvia?
Good, thanks.
She's gonna do all our reports.
Yeah, she should, yeah. We should bring her in some of the more complex ones, you know? Okay, district grants, Blandford.
It's a fairly straightforward application that's come through for District Number 1 Community Center, looking for some funding to support the replacement of a ramp, and the request is for $1,000.
We approve the grant request.
Moved and seconded, discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion's carried.
Just one quick reminder, if I could, there's only 3 council meetings left this fiscal year, so if...
Oh, we gotta get our money spent.
Yeah, so if you have some groups that are, have some outstanding applications, they should be in soon.
Okay, I have one more thing before we go in camera, and that's a motion to cancel next week's meeting, which we already know we're canceling it because we're going on tour and doing this, that.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by, seconded by everybody.
Thank you.
Pick whoever you want. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. And now, do you want to take 5 minutes before we go in camera? We just have the one item, don't we?
Yes.
Okay, motion to go in camera?
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.